Chapter 18. A god hurried forward and whispered a few words into the young man's ear. The young man's gaze flickered as he lifted his head to look at Yun with a smile, saying, "This young master thought that. You're no ordinary person after all. Young Master Yun, it's an honor to meet you." Yun wore a surprised expression. "Huh." The young man in blue still spoke in a slow tone as if everything was within his grasp. He smiled and said, "The young master of Marquis Xiaoyao, beyond the heavens. You're famous in Tiantang City. Since young Master Yun has such an identity, this young master doesn't have to worry about the wager this time." Yang's pupils shrunk. "You investigated me? It's not really an investigation. It's just that knowing yourself and your enemy is the key to victory." The young man in blue said, "I wonder what young Marquis Yun is willing to bet with me." Yun frowned, looking hesitant. The young man in blue wore a disdainful smirk as he said, "Since young Master Yun has asked to bet with this young master, it can't be that. You don't even have a wager to offer?" Yun raised his eyebrows. "We'll bet 1,000,000. The young man in blue laughed mockingly and interrupted him, saying, "We're all martial artists. There's really nothing to bet on like gold and silver. Let's bet on something else." The other two young masters could not help but burst out laughing. It was always a delight to see the young master in blue use various methods to force others into a corner, yet unable to do anything about it. In the end they could only submit. It was the same today. Obviously, this young master of Marquis Xiaoyao in Tiantang City had been pushed to a dead end by his friend. Even if he had to go bankrupt, he had to maintain his dignity. Yun hesitated and said, "If that's the case, young master's bet is too big and it might hurt our relationship. How about we stop here?" How could the young man in blue agree? A big fish was about to take the bait. How could he allow him to escape? His expression darkened as he said coldly, "Is young Master Yun looking down on me? I'll bet when you say so. I'll stop now when you say no? Even if young Master Yun holds a high position in the Empire of Yutong, you can't play with people like this." He narrowed his eyes and enunciated each word clearly. "Moreover, I, Shiman Dai, am not someone you can toy with, young Master Yun." Shiman Dai. In the end, he still said his name. Yun nodded as if he knew nothing and said, "So it's young Master Shiman. It looks like young Master Shiman is determined to gamble?" However, his heart shuddered. West Gate. The world's 8 great clans, North, South, East, West, Spring, Summer, Autumn, and Winter. It seemed that Shiman Dai was a member of the Shiman clan. Just as he was thinking, he heard Shiman Dai say proudly, "Even if I don't want to, I have to." How could he let Yun go now that he had forced Yun to a dead end? Shiman Dai could not help but feel a little proud of his own methods. Of course he was in the wrong at first. It was completely unreasonable of him to butt in when someone else wanted to buy something. However, as he spoke, he realized that he was so eloquent that he was actually moving in an unexpected direction step by step. Furthermore, he wanted to gamble. Wasn't this an obvious opportunity to reap benefits? He waved his hand and said mockingly, "Why? Could it be that young Master Yun can't afford to gamble?" What he meant was, "You proposed a bet and I accepted it, but you don't dare to gamble?" Yang's face flushed red as he said angrily, "Who can't afford to gamble? Whatever you want to bet, this young master will accept it." "You've fallen for this young master's provocation." Shiman Dai was overjoyed. Borrowing Yang's impulsive words, he said directly, "This young master can offer a 7th-grade mystical pill, 100 mystical stones, and a treasured saber, Phoenix's Cry, one of the 7 swords and 3 sabers forged by the foremost blacksmith Hunzi 1,000 years ago. However, what does young Master Yun offer to gamble with me?" The crowd gasped in surprise. A 7th-grade mystical pill. If the mystical pill of a 7th-grade mystical beast were to be calculated in gold, it would be worth at least 1,000,000. As for the mystical stones, they were the ultimate supplement for a mystical cultivator's cultivation. The energy within a mystical stone could be absorbed within 3 days, and after that, it was equivalent to a year of closed-door cultivation. This was even more of a priceless treasure. As for the 7 swords and 3 sabers forged by Hunzi, they were universally recognized as divine weapons. Among them, the Merak sword was the Empire of Dongshuan's national treasure. One could only imagine the value of the 7 swords and 3 sabers. Each of these 3 items was a treasure that most people in this world would not even see once in their lifetime. What would Yun Yang use to gamble? Yun Yang's gaze was filled with hesitation. He was also slightly shocked. It was true. Because he didn't expect that this guy would make the bet so big. To him, this was simply a windfall from the sky. If so, he might as well play a big one as well. Looking at Yun Yang's shock, Shiman Wandai was even more pleased. What do you think, young Master Yun? Shiman Wandai said slowly, if young Master Yun only chooses one of them to gamble with, it doesn't matter. Yun Yang sucked in a deep breath and said, these things are not enough. Shiman Wandai and his 2 companions were stunned. These things are not enough? You are merely the son of a marquis from a secular country. What good things can you offer? Yun Yang seemed to hesitate for a moment before saying, I will use a 9th-level mystical beast's cub to gamble with you. These things are not worth enough. Yun Yang sucked in a deep breath, knowing that he would become the center of a whirlpool the moment he uttered these words. But he did not turn back. Was he betting just to win something? Humph! A 9th-level mystical beast's cub. Even Shiman Wandai felt his scalp tingle from the shock of these words. This was a legendary 9th-level mystical beast. Whether it was in the forest or in human society, it was a king that stood at the top of the pyramid. You have a 9th-level mystical beast's cub? Shiman Wandai's gaze turned heated. The faint greed in his eyes could not be concealed. Of course. Yun Yang seemed a little regretful, but if you don't dare to gamble then, I'll gamble. Shiman Wandai cut him off abruptly, his eyes burning. But where is your 9th-level mystical beast cub? Even the weakest 9th-level mystical beast was an invincible presence among ordinary human experts. Where was the 9th-level mystical beast? Yun Yang almost laughed in his heart. He wanted very much to say that it was in the basket right before him. These kittens were. These little fellows had somehow fallen to this place and were born weak. But before they came here, their parents had placed a seal on their bodies, making it impossible for others to identify them. As long as they are in my hands, I can restore them to their original state within a night and turn them into a priceless 9th-level mystical beast cub. If young Master Shiman believes me, then let's gamble. Yun Yang said faintly, although the 9th-level mystical beast cub is not in my hands now, if I say I have it, then I have it. He lifted his head and smiled. If I'm lying, I'm afraid I can't bear the Shiman family's vengeance. Shiman Wandai's eyes shone as he said coldly, it's good that you know. Shiman Wandai did not doubt Yun Yang's words at all. Now it was his turn to fret. What could possibly be worth the value of a 9th-level mystical beast cub? The 7th-level mystical pill, 100 mystical stones, and a saber that he had mentioned earlier were obviously not enough. These could allow a person to develop rapidly, but that was all. Compared to a 9th-level mystical beast, it was insignificant. His Shiman family had been able to become one of the 8 noble families because one of the elders of the family had a 9th-level pinnacle mystical beast as his combat partner. This was how the foundation of the Shiman family's rise had been laid. Now, the Shiman family was close to 1,500 years old. Even 108th-level pinnacle mystical beasts could not compare to a 9th-level beginner mystical beast. This was the suppression of a level, and the law of nature could not be changed. If he could possess a 9th-level mystical beast cub, then it would not only be a matter of him becoming the #1 seed in the family, but the entire Shiman family would gradually grow stronger and become the top of the 8 noble families of the continent, perhaps even to the next level. Shiman Wandai's gaze was fiery. Beside him, the expressions of the 2 young masters who were originally his companions changed as well. As the younger generation of the same family, how could they not know the importance of a 9th-level mystical beast? If Shiman Wandai were to obtain a 9th-level mystical beast, their gazes towards Yun Yang turned dangerous. I'll offer 2 7th-level mystical beast cores. Shiman Wandai's gaze was close to insanity. 500 mystical stones, 30 mystical crystals, a treasured saber of the 7 swords and 3 sabers, and a promise to guarantee the safety of the Yun family. This promise, no matter if I win or lose the bet, is absolutely valid. I can swear to the heavens and earth. The mystical pills had doubled, the mystical stones had quadrupled, and he had even added 30 mystical crystals. One had to know that the value of a mystical crystal was comparable to 100 mystical stones. They could not be compared at all. This young master Shiman Wandai had obviously given his all. Even Ji Ling, who was hiding in the dark, was impressed by his words. This young master Shimin Wandai was not a brainless person after all. Yun Yang had been goaded by him into revealing the 9th-level mystical beast. He would probably become the target of public criticism next. The issue of safety was the biggest issue. Everything that Shimin Wandai had said earlier could not compare to the value of a 9th-level mystical beast. However, with the promise to guarantee the safety of the Yun family, it was a match. It was evident that Shimin Wandai's mind was still very sharp, and he was able to grasp the main point. Jiling sighed deeply. It's a pity that you have no hope of winning at all. The more you bet, the more it proves that Yun Yang will win. However, where would Yun Yang get a 9th-level mystical beast? Jiling felt that it was time for Yun Yang to relent. Indeed. Yun Yang took a deep breath, a radiant smile appearing on his face as he said, I accept the bet. All the bait that could be thrown had been thrown out, and the benefits that could be obtained had basically been dug out to the lowest level. The additional goal that he had wanted to achieve had also been achieved. Chapter 19. None of the onlookers had expected such a shocking wager to occur in this small mystical beast trading market. They were all dumbfounded. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the two of them took 3 steps forward and clapped their hands to seal the wager. The wager was officially established. Everyone's gaze was focused on the bamboo frame between the two of them. It was these few ordinary lightning cats that could decide the outcome of such a shocking wager with their choice. The entire incident was so absurd that it felt surreal. Although the crowd had witnessed the entire process with their own eyes, they were still confused. Why had such a wager suddenly occurred? If Yun Yang had been the one to initiate the wager, he had indeed suggested it first. However, he had wanted to back off when he saw that the stakes were a little too high. This was something that everyone could see. In the end, Shimin Wandai had forced him into a dead end and had no choice but to take the gamble. From the looks of it, it was definitely not Yun Yang's initiative. It did not seem like it was Shimin Wandai's initiative either. His main intention was to bully others, but who would have thought that a wager of 9th-level mystical beasts would occur in the end? All the aristocratic disciples looked at Shimin Wandai with envy and jealousy. How could this fellow be so lucky? He had just casually strolled around the mystical beast market, and he had actually come across such a lucky wager. A 9th-level mystical beast. With Shimin Wandai's skill and the wager of the mystical beast's recognition, how could it not have been a piece of cake? How could the son of a mere marquis from the Empire of Yutong be a match for the Shimin family, one of the 8 noble families? Shimin Wandai had simply picked up a chance for his family to rise again. A light flashed in mid-air as a few silhouettes descended like immortals from the heavens. It was the Shimin family. Shimin Wandai was finally relieved and looked at his 2 companions with a smug expression. He lifted his chin and said to Yun Yang, Let's begin. Yun Yang took a deep breath and looked at Shimin Wandai with a complicated gaze. He did not speak for a long time. Shimin Wandai frowned. An intimidating aura emanated from him. Do you dare not take the wager? I'll kill you. Yun Yang said helplessly. Let's begin. Let's see who will emerge victorious. He even put on an expression of anger. Ji Ling, who was hidden in the shadows, almost burst out laughing. You're about to kill him, yet you're still acting so helpless. The shopkeeper was obviously frightened as well. His legs were trembling as he carried the big bamboo basket out. The newly arrived old man standing behind Shimin Wanli was an old man with an aquiline nose. He slowly spread his hands apart and an invisible force spread out. With a schwa sound, the surrounding crowd suddenly scattered in all directions, as though they had encountered an irresistible force, creating a large empty space. Under Shimin Wandai's suggestion, the bamboo basket was tipped upside down and placed in the middle. Then, the two of them began to lure the kitten from 100 feet away. Yun Yang agreed after some thought. This delighted Shimin Wandai even more. My trap was a complete success. Moreover, this idiot had already stepped into it. Ha ha ha! Among the onlookers, there were many who sighed and stamped their feet. You idiot! You have nothing on you right now. On the other hand, great young Master Shimin had come for the mystical beast competition. How could he not have something on him? By agreeing to this condition, you've already lost. The shopkeeper had gathered 7 or 8 kittens in the middle, waiting for orders. Yun Yang was already sitting cross-legged 100 feet away. Opposite him, a pile of snow-white medicinal pills and a small bell appeared in Shimin Wandai's hands. He smiled confidently. It's over. It's over. That idiot Yun will definitely lose. Someone lamented. Yes, Shiman Wandai has the mystical beast pill, and it's of the highest grade. Not only that, he even has the mystical beast soul bell, the ultimate weapon against mystical beasts. What right does that Yun have to compete with him? Sigh, the Shiman clan has taken advantage of it for nothing. The other young master sighed. Initially, these fellows had hoped that Yun Yang would pull an upset. They could not let the 9th level mystical beast fall into the hands of the Shiman clan. Looking at the situation now, however, they were all in despair. Everyone can rely on their own methods now. Shiman Wandai said sanctimoniously, "Now, we'll start luring the mystical beast. Let's see if it will come to my side or yours." Yun Yang put on a dumbfounded expression of grief and indignation. "Young Master Shiman, isn't it a little unfair for you to bet like this?" Shiman Wandai said gleefully, "There shouldn't be anything unfair about this. I'm still me, and you're still you. During this process, I didn't rely on any external forces to obtain anything. Everything I obtained was what I already had on me. You are the same. This means that you and I are only relying on our own methods. From the moment young Master Yun suggested this bet, I was like this, and so were you. Therefore this young master feels that this is a fair and reasonable bet, and there's nothing fishy about it." Shiman Wandai said seriously, "If I were to lose under such circumstances, I would naturally be willing to accept my loss." Yun Yang shuddered. Shiman Wandai frowned and said word by word, "Our bet is witnessed by heaven and earth. Could it be that young Master Yun wishes to break the bet?" Yun Yang dared not voice his anger. "If that's the case, I shall accept my loss if I were to lose. Consider it as making a friend." Shiman Wandai laughed. "Young Master Yun is indeed magnanimous. If that's the case, let us begin." Yun Yang's face was dark as he said, "Begin. Victory or defeat is up to fate." The order was given amidst Shiman Wandai's triumphant laughter. The mystical beast shopkeeper opened the bamboo basket, revealing a total of 9 kittens that looked like they had just turned 1 month old. Each of them looked around timidly, meowing. On the other side, Shiman Wandai had already scattered a bunch of mystical beast pills on the ground. At the same time, his left hand channeled his skill to produce a gust of wind that blew the fragrance of the pills over. His right hand was similarly channeling his skill, moving soundlessly along the ground to intercept any possibility of Yun Yang making the same move. At the same time, the profound beast soul bell in the crook of his arm rang out, emitting a series of mysterious bell sounds that seemed to carry a strange rhythm. 3 killer moves had been unleashed at once. Shiman Wandai was determined to win. Yun Yang's expression was still one of indignation, as if he had been deceived. He sat with his legs crossed, the endless divine art in his body beginning to circulate at full force. The tiny leaves of the lotus of endless fate swayed, emitting a strong air of vitality. At the same time, Yun Yang looked anxious as he stared at the 9 kittens, calling out anxiously, "Kittens, quick, come to me. Come, come. I'll take good care of you all." Laughter rang out from all around. "You're too naive. Do you really think the kittens can understand what you're saying?" The rich aroma of the mystical beast pills had almost enveloped the entire area. A few kittens huddled together, looking timidly from side to side as if hesitating, unsure of what to choose. Shiman Wandai's smile widened. He could clearly see that the kittens were looking at him more and more frequently. A sigh came from behind him. Shiman Wandai's expression did not change, but his eyes were sharp. Those who are sighing now are those who don't wish for the Shiman family to obtain a 9th-level mystical beast. They usually call each other brothers, but who would have thought that they all have their own intentions behind the scenes? After this, he would have to reconsider his attitude towards them. It was at this moment that exclamations of disbelief rang out. Shiman Wandai's expression changed as he turned his head to look. Among the 9 kittens, 2 of them had actually begun to move after a moment of hesitation. They first took 2 steps towards him, but then stopped. They were hesitating again. Their fluffy tails swayed loosely as they let out soft, weak cries. Their wavering was obvious. Shiman Wandai panicked. "I've already gained such a huge advantage, yet you're still hesitating? What are you hesitating for? Come over here quickly." Looking at the opposite side, Yun Yang was still calling out futilely, "Kittens, come quick, kittens!" However, amidst his ridiculous cries, the two kittens who had already begun to move actually began to slowly turn around and head towards Yunyang. Everyone present was dumbfounded at the same time. "Come back!" Shimin Wandai roared anxiously, beads of sweat forming on his face. However, the two kittens seemed to have been startled by his shout as they ran even faster towards Yunyang. The distance of 100 feet was not considered long. The two kittens had reached Yunyang in an instant as they stumbled and swayed. Their 4 tiny front paws were raised together as they hugged Yunyang's calf affectionately, raising their heads to meow as if to say, "Good man, protect us quickly, you've scared us to death. That person over there is so scary. He's like a lunatic." Yunyang hugged the two kittens in delight, beaming with delight as he stroked them affectionately. The two kittens rubbed themselves against Yunyang's body, trying their best to please him. Greedily breathing in Yunyang's scent, their faces were filled with contentment. Everyone was petrified. Everyone's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. What was going on? Why was it that the one who had prepared to the teeth was showing signs of losing, while the one who had no cultivation base, no tricks, no miraculous pills, and no facilities, young Master Yun of Tiantang City, seemed to have the upper hand? 2 of the kittens had already chosen their owners. Everyone was even more nervous now. There were hundreds of people watching, but no one dared to make a sound. Shimin Wandai tried his best to urge his mystical qi to maximize the fragrance of the pills, sweat dripping from his face. Only 2 had passed, there was still hope. There was still hope. "Come quickly." Shimin Wandai prayed in his heart. However, things did not go as he wished. Another white kitten made a move. It raised its paw and hesitated for a moment, then suddenly made a beautiful turn. It sprinted towards Yunyang. Another wave of eyeballs fell to the ground. This time, it was even faster. Almost instantaneously, it scurried into Yunyang's embrace, meowing happily and contentedly. Shimin Wandai's face was as white as the bottom of a wok. 3 of them. But he still had nothing to show for it. The onlookers' mouths were agape and their eyes were as round as saucers, watching the unbelievable scene unfold before them like puppets, each of them feeling like they were dreaming. "This is ridiculous. What I'm seeing can't be real. How could such an unimaginable thing happen?" "Young master, do not panic, there are still 6 more. The elder from the Shimin family comforted him with a dark expression. "We still have a lot of hope." Shimin Wandai nodded nervously, his palms sweating. The next moment, all of a sudden, the remaining 6 kittens started to move collectively. The previous 3 were what Yunyang really wanted, while the remaining 6 were the real lightning cats. However, even if they were 3rd-level mystical beasts, they were still mystical beasts. Perhaps their reactions would be slower, but they could still sense what was most beneficial to them in this world. The 6 kittens meowed at the same time and turned around, striding elegantly towards Yunyang. They ran faster and faster. Their eyes were sparkling with joy, and their furry tails were wagging happily. Shimin Wandai's face was ashen, sweat pouring down his face like a waterfall. Chapter 20. Damn it! Shimin Wandai suddenly roared as he stood up. His face contorted in fury as he struck out with his palm. A flash of golden light flashed. A few tender cries of pain could be heard. The 6 lightning cats that had been sprinting towards Yunyang were sent flying into the air, their blood splattering like rain. "Stop!" Yunyang bellowed in fury as he dashed out. No matter how fast he was, his cultivation base was still too far away from Shimin Wandai's. He only managed to grab one of the kittens before mystical qi enveloped him. Wah! Yunyang trembled as he spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale as a sheet. His cultivation base had yet to recover. He could not withstand a single blow from such a force. However, his eyes were still fixed on the opposite side. "Young Master Shimin, are you a sore loser?" Shimin Wandai was trembling as he glared at Yunyang. He wanted to deny this outcome, but heaven and earth were the witnesses of the wager. There was no way he could deny it. "Admit defeat." Shimin Wandai's face was twisted like a ferocious ghost. "These things are all yours." Everyone present was still in a daze. They were all dumbstruck. They could not fathom how such a bizarre outcome had come about. Shimin Wandai's heart trembled as he looked at the items he had handed over, despair creeping into his eyes. 2 7th-grade mystical beast cores, 500 mystical stones, 30 mystical crystals, and a treasured saber. Even the Shiman family would suffer for a while if he were to hand over these items. This was a massive amount of resources. Other than the treasured saber that he had begged his family headfather to obtain, which was something that truly belonged to him, the rest belonged to the family. If he were to hand over these items, his days in the family would be extremely difficult. He could not even maintain his current status, let alone improve further. Yun Yang's face was pale as he smiled. Young Master Shiman is indeed trustworthy. Thank you, thank you. Also, I'll leave the safety of my humble home in the Shiman family's hands in the future. Shiman Wandai almost spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes fixed on Yun Yang as he said, "Of course. Due to the terms of the wager, we must do our best." Everyone looked at Yun Yang with a complicated gaze. This guy won just like that? But how did he win? Shiman Wandai's mystical beast core was still scattered on the ground, as if the people's doubts had been scattered all over. The people of Shiman clan quickly left, and the onlookers also gradually dispersed. The other young masters studied Yun Yang for a while with complicated gazes before leaving as well. Yun Yang held a lightning cat in his arms. This kitten was saved by him just now, but it was also seriously injured. Now it looked dispirited, its eyes were half closed, and it was moaning weakly. Yun Yang channeled a gust of mystical qi into the kitten's tiny body, barely keeping it alive. The other 3 snow-white kittens gathered by Yun Yang's feet and lined up in a row. They tilted their heads to look at Yun Yang, their black and white eyes distinct. Yun Yang smiled. He had finally gotten his hands on these treasures. Now, he actually had a total of 4. Just thinking about it made him feel incredulous. "Young master, this," the shopkeeper said with a long face. "It's all right, I'll pay you for the dead ones as well." Yun Yang said, "But shopkeeper, I have a question for you." The shopkeeper was overjoyed. Shiman Wandai had killed his kittens and left without compensation. The shopkeeper knew that he could not afford to offend him and was prepared to accept his bad luck. He did not expect Yun Yang to be willing to compensate him, which was wonderful. He said gratefully, "Young master, please ask away." Yun Yang pondered for a moment before saying, "These 4 kittens, where did you find them?" He pointed at the 4 cats whose fur was clearly crystal white. The shopkeeper suddenly felt a little awkward and said, half a month ago in the wee hours of the morning, a man suddenly fainted in front of my door. I saved him, and in his arms were these 4 kittens. I saw that they were lightning cat cubs, so I decided to put them up for sale here. Cough cough." Yun Yang's eyes lit up. "Where's the person?" The shopkeeper sighed and said, "Ever since I saved him, he has been in a coma. Until now, he has not woken up. Every day, he can only force some soup and water into his mouth to maintain his life. I've sought medical help for him, but I really can't afford the huge medical fees. I'm not going to make it." Yun Yang said, "Bring me to him." If Yun Yang's guess was correct, the person who could bring these 4 mystical beast cubs with him must have come from the depths of the mystical beast forest. Who knew how many dangers he had gone through? He might even have killed 2 adult mystical beasts before he could bring these cubs back. Which one of these people was not an earth-shattering existence? He had actually fainted in front of a mystical beast shop, and had even been saved by the shopkeeper, selling his mystical beast cubs as lightning cats. The shopkeeper brought Yun Yang inside. Yun Yang carried the injured lightning cat in his arms, while the other 4 kittens lined up obediently behind him, not leaving his side for even an inch. The 1,000 illusion monkey squatted obediently on Yun Yang's shoulder. At this moment, Yun Yang looked like a juggler. Ji Ling was already by Yun Yang's side, looking at him with a smile that said, "Young lad, you have to give me an explanation when we get home." Others might not have known, but Ji Ling was very clear about it. Yun Yang had indeed tricked the Shiman family this time. However, there was one thing that Ji Ling could not understand. With Yun Yang's current status, why would he want to offend the Shiman family? They were people from 2 different worlds. How could they afford to offend Yun Yang? In the room at the back of the mystical beast shop, the smell of medicine assailed one's nostrils. An emaciated man was lying on it, breathing weakly. His face was as pale as paper, a deathly gray. He doesn't have long to live, but I really can't save him. I might as well give him a quick death, but I can't bring myself to do it. The plump shopkeeper looked melancholy. I've been worried to death these days. Yun Yang approached and examined the man, frowning. He then tried his best to channel some air of vitality over and said, "You can't save him here. Let me take him away." The shopkeeper was overjoyed. He had been worried to death about this hot potato, and now that Yun Yang was willing to take it, he was overjoyed. "Thank you, young master, thank you." Yun Yang nodded. "When he's better, I'll tell him that it was you who saved him." "There's no need for that." The shopkeeper only wanted to send this hot potato away as soon as possible. How could he be greedy for repayment? Just say that young master is kind and generous. This lowly one didn't do anything. I dare not claim credit. Yun Yang looked at him deeply and said, "That's good too." The shopkeeper did not know what kind of opportunity he had missed. Not to mention the 4 9th-level mystical beast cubs. Just the favor of a pinnacle expert was enough for him to enjoy forever. However, Yun Yang did not plan to let it go completely. Although this person was timid and weak, he was able to lend a helping hand when he was in danger. He saw someone on the brink of death, but he still tried his best to hold on. After paying, Yun Yang purposely paid an extra 1,000 silver taels and hired a stretcher to carry the man to the residence of Yun. Jiling followed with a smile. The journey was silent. "You've made a fortune today. How do you want to thank me?" Seeing that Yun Yang had settled down, Jiling finally asked for credit with her hands behind her back. "Thank you." Yun Yang pursed his lips. "Why should I thank you? You saw me being bullied today and you didn't come out to help. It's fine if you're a coward, but you want me to thank you?" Jiling retorted angrily. "If it wasn't for me, would you have one?" Yun Yang rolled his eyes, feeling that women were really unreasonable creatures. "Do you think I can't win without you?" Jiling stomped her foot. "You idiot. Those people were my acquaintances. If I had appeared, you wouldn't have been able to gamble. That's the first reason." "The second?" "The second, if it wasn't for my 1,000 illusion monkey, why would they be so polite to you?" Jiling snorted. Yun Yang thought about it and realized that it made sense. In the beginning, those fellows' gazes were constantly scanning the 1,000 illusion monkey's body, and they had a look of uncertainty and shock on their faces. "So that's why? They were polite to me because I'm handsome." Yun Yang would not admit it. "But what do you want from me?" Jiling said, "Give me one of your 4 kittens as a token of gratitude." "No way." Yun Yang refused without hesitation. "Don't even think about it. This is a high-level mystical beast's infant that can only be chanced upon. How can you take one away for free? Do I know you that well?" Jiling fumed at Yun Yang's rejection. You are so unreasonable. You were supposed to accompany me to buy a mystical beast, but you didn't even buy me a single strand of the beast's fur. Instead, it was you who took advantage of me. Now, I want a mere 3rd-level mystical beast cub from you, and you're actually unwilling." Jiling glared at him. "Why are you so petty?" Yun Yang smiled wryly. "Petty? I really can't afford to be generous about this. If you were my wife, I could give you one to protect yourself, but you're not, of course." He dared not say this aloud. "It's not that I don't want to give it to you, but this 3rd-level lightning cat is a little too." Yun Yang rolled his eyes and said, "Actually, I've been searching for it for you today. I've already chosen a target that's much better than this one. There's a 5th-level pinnacle silver moon celestial wolf opposite the shop. I think that one is better. If you choose that one and take this lightning cat, won't it become food for the silver moon celestial wolf? What's the point of that?" Yun Yang was eloquent, trying his best to convince Jiling, silver moon celestial wolf? Jiling's attention was indeed attracted. "That's right. A silver moon celestial wolf. Its fur is silver and shiny. Moreover, it looks obedient and cute, harmless to humans and animals. It can be kept as a pet, but it can protect its master at critical moments. Most importantly, a silver moon celestial wolf cub at the peak of the 5th level can evolve if it is raised well. But once it mutates, it's hard to say how far it can go in the future. It's not impossible for it to advance continuously to the 8th or 9th level. The key is how to train it and what resources to accumulate. Besides, I've noticed that the baby silver moon celestial wolf is not even a month old yet. It's the best time to raise it." As he spoke, he looked at Jiling's eyes that were growing brighter and brighter. He continued, "Of course, the resources needed to raise the silver moon celestial wolf will be astronomical. Most people don't have such resources, but it shouldn't be a problem for you, young lady, right? No worries, no worries. Ji Ling's eyes shone with excitement. Think about it, if the Silver Moon Celestial Wolf could evolve in your hands. Yun Yang smiled and stopped halfway through his sentence. Ji Ling's face was already beaming with joy. One could only imagine how much face she would gain. Of course, if you really want this lightning cat, I can give you one. I have a total of 5 of them. It's not a big deal. Yun Yang continued, in that case, the Silver Moon Celestial Wolf will be mine. No way! Ji Ling shouted angrily. The Silver Moon Celestial Wolf is mine. I'll go buy it now. He turned around and ran out with a whoosh. Yun Yang coughed, wiping the sweat from his brow as he watched the young lady disappear into the distance. Go buy the Silver Moon Celestial Wolf. I'll train it for you when I come back. It's best to send this lady away as soon as possible. She didn't want him to find out that there were 4 ninth-grade profound beast cubs right under her nose one day, yet she had remained indifferent to them. I guess I'll be in trouble then. Yun Yang pursed his lips and sighed. Women are not to be trifled with, especially when they fly into a rage out of humiliation. But that's a matter for the future. The most important thing now is that these 4 little fellows are all mine. Yun Yang looked at the 4 fellows that were like kittens circling around him and could not help but smile. Chapter 21. These little fellows were finally in his hands. Yun Yang verified them according to Supreme Wind's illustrated history of exotic beasts of the mountains and seas. He pulled their ears, looked at their stomachs, flipped their eyelids, looked at their nostrils, looked at their throats, and inserted mystical chi to check. Finally, he could confirm that these were the cubs of the 9th-level beginner mystical beasts, the Eclipse Panther. The Eclipse Panther moved like the wind, was good at hiding, and hunted swiftly. It had always been known as the assassin of the mystical beasts. When it matured, it could consume gold and jade for food. It had bronze skin and iron bones, indestructible. Yun Yang was overjoyed. At the same time he had a doubt. Who was 8th Brother Supreme Wind's true identity? The Shiman family of the 8 noble families, plus Shiman Wandai's companions, must be young masters of similar status. They even brought along their followers who were all experts. They did not even suspect anything. Yun Yang, on the other hand, could easily recognize and identify them according to what was written in a book. Each of the 8 noble families had more than 1,000 years of history, but their knowledge could not even compare to a book that Supreme Wind had casually placed by his pillow. Even if there were specializations in this field, it was definitely not an easy task. Yun Yang suppressed this doubt in his heart. 8th Brother's identity had to be clarified. Everything that 8th Brother had yet to complete, he would complete on his behalf. However, the prerequisite was that he had to recover from his injuries and raise his cultivation base to deal with these endless enemies. Young master, you. Lao Mei was dumbfounded. His young master had gone out once the day before yesterday. When he came back, a monkey had followed him. There was also a lively woman. Today, his young master had gone out again. When he came back, he had brought back 5 cats. There was also a half-dead man. Lao Mei was rather curious. Young master, will you bring back hundreds and thousands of wolves the next time you go out? Or perhaps a large group of men and women? Nothing much, just a few small pets. Yun Yang said, inform Ma Qin and the rest to come to the residence of Yun tonight. Tell them that there's something good this time. Lao Mei was exasperated. And even gave them a notice? How dare they come? Those fellows must have been traumatized by this. Don't worry, they will definitely come this time, Yun Yang said confidently. Lao Mei was confused. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Yun Yang take out a small pouch from his robe and pass it to him. There are some cultivation resources in here. Use them to cultivate. If I can break through to the 6th mountain soon, that would be even better. Lao Mei took the bag and left in a daze. When he was out of Yun Yang's sight, he could not help but yelp when he opened the bag. His hands trembled and he almost threw the pouch away. The inside was filled with resplendent brilliance and dense spiritual chi. There were actually 50 mysterious stones and 10 mysterious crystals. This was a priceless treasure that could aid in cultivation. Young master, where did you get it? There are so many of them. Lao Mei could not help but feel a surge of warmth in his heart as he thought about it. He had been stuck at the bottleneck of the fifth mountain for 4 or 5 years. Now that he had these things, he would definitely be able to break through the sixth mountain. For a martial artist to become a true expert in cultivation, there was a prerequisite. 6 innately awakened chakras was not uncommon. One could enter the mystical realm by stepping through the door. 3 parts of fate were determined by heaven, and 70% of the foundation was eternal. In other words, one had to be gifted with 6 innately awakened chakras and above to be able to enter the mystical realm. 6 innately awakened chakras was only a gift bestowed by the heavens. There would be nothing if one did not work hard. Only then would there be the merit 12 mountains. Each mountain a different heaven. A wise man once said, "A martial artist's cultivation is like climbing a mountain with a heavy load. Only by climbing the peak of a mountain can one see where the next peak is." There would always be a tallest mountain in front of one's eyes. Before climbing the first mountain, one would never know that there was a higher mountain in this world than the one in front of him. This unknown was known as the barrier of knowledge. Therefore there was another saying that went, to ascend to heaven, first climb a mountain. After one mountain, there would be a heaven. The meaning was, only by climbing this mountain would you be able to see a whole new world. Therefore, the merit 12 mountains. Each mountain a different heaven. First pass the 12 mountains, then the 9 heavens. It seemed easy to understand, with a tinge of vulgarity, but it was a step-by-step path. "I'm back." Ji Ling rushed in excitedly, carrying a small timid silver-white animal on her shoulder. "Look, the silver moon celestial wolf. I've bought it. How is it? Can you see if it's this little guy?" Yun Yang went forward to take a look and nodded. Yes, it is. Lady's luck is not bad. It hasn't been bought after such a long time." Ji Ling squinted her eyes but said, "Thank you so much. The whole market is talking about your shocking bet. Who would still be in the mood to trade?" "Haha." Yun Yang laughed and said, "I'll train your pet from tomorrow onwards." Then today. Ji Ling was chased away by Yun Yang before she could finish her sentence. "I have something to do today. Can't you see there are still injured people here? This bastard really doesn't have the slightest bit of manliness. How can he treat a beauty so rudely and uncompromisingly?" Ji Ling mumbled to herself, stomping her feet angrily and leaving with a pout. Her words were not soft, so Yun Yang heard her clearly. The corners of his lips curled into a disdainful smile. What was manliness? Was it edible? Why did he need to treat a beauty with manliness? Why did he need to compromise? If this beauty could eventually become this man's wife, it was fine to compromise. However, not all women could become a man's wife. Then why should I give in to you? Just because you're a woman? That's called being cheap, not manliness. Yun Yang did not voice out his true thoughts. Of course, if Lao Mei knew of Yun Yang's thoughts, he would definitely beat his chest and stomp his feet. "Young master, there's a reason you're still single at the age of 19. Yun Yang walked into the room. As he walked in, he had a vague feeling that something was not right. However, he could not recall what it was. It was only when he reached the bed of the dying man that he remembered. "Ha! Why is there powder dripping down from my arms?" Instinctively, he reached into his arms. Suddenly, he sucked in a breath of air and with a swoosh, he pulled out a large parcel from his arms. However, the originally large parcel had shrunk to more than half its original size. Yun Yang's eyes widened into 2 bronze bells. What was going on? Opening the parcel, there was nothing wrong with it. Inside were the fresh mystical stones, mystical crystals, and mystical pills that he had just won today. The mystical pills were still intact. There were 2 of them, that was right. However, where were the mystical stones? Why were there 200 missing? Why did the rest seem to have shrunk as well? Where were the mystical crystals? There were 30 of them in total. I gave Lao Mei 5 of them, so there should be 25 left. Why are there only 13 left? Where did the other 12 go? Other than that, there were countless powders in the parcel. Yun Yang felt a little dizzy as he took a look. The mystical stones and mystical crystals that I lost. They wouldn't have turned into powder, would they? Could it be that Shiman Wandai gave me fake goods? But I've already verified it. No matter how blind I am, I wouldn't be mistaken. Could it be? Yun Yang entered the space of his consciousness anxiously. Taking a look, he saw the tender green leaves of the lotus of endless fate swaying in joy. Although the second lotus leaf had not grown, it was obvious that the color of the leaf had darkened. It was visibly thicker than before. At the root of the lotus of endless fate, there was a crystal-clear mist that had condensed into a solid form. Yunyang shuddered at the sight of it. Wasn't this the purest mystical qi contained within the mystical crystals and mystical stones? I was wondering why they had turned into powder. So they had all been stolen. Despicable thief! Yunyang glared at the seedling, almost going crazy. He had only managed to get his hands on some cultivation resources after offending the Shiman family by chance, but half of them had been devoured by the lotus of endless fate in such a short time. By a stroke of luck, he had offended the Shiman clan in order to obtain some cultivation resources. Yet, in such a short period of time, half of them had been devoured by the lotus of endless fate. As if sensing Yunyang's anger, the seedling swayed slightly and curled up its leaves in a guilty manner. It actually looked a little shy. It was like a child who had done something wrong and was apologizing. "Oh my, I'm wrong." Yunyang was momentarily taken aback by the cuteness, feeling his anger vanish into thin air in an instant. "A few days ago, on my neck, on my arm, under my pillow in my study. Did you steal the calming frost jade as well?" The seedling's leaves curled up even tighter, almost turning into a long strip as it swayed gently. Yunyang was exasperated and amused at the same time. He finally understood. It looked like this little fellow did not only need the air of injustice to grow, it also needed the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and the qi of heaven and earth treasures. The difference was that the air of injustice could allow it to grow new leaves and speed up its advancement, while the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth treasures and jades could make it stronger. It's like a child who needs to grow taller and stronger at the same time. Yunyang understood. "All right, don't do it secretly next time. Just take it openly. But you can't touch it if I need it, or else I won't let you eat any of it in the future." With a swoosh, the leaves unfurled and the seedling's vines swayed happily as if they were dancing in celebration. Yunyang could clearly feel the joy radiating from the seedling, and could not help the corners of his lips curling into a smile. A lotus that can understand my words? Yunyang could not help but chuckle at the thought. Who would believe him if he said it out loud? As if it was a reward, Yunyang saw the vine shake and a spot of green light flew out and burrowed into Yunyang's meridians. Yunyang felt a rush of coolness as an indescribable vitality filled his meridians. The injury he had suffered from Shiman Wandai's palm strike just now disappeared without a trace. At the same time, he was invigorated and his mind seemed to be clearer than ever. "This fellow can help me recover?" Yunyang was overjoyed and asked, "Can it restore my cultivation base to what it was a year ago as soon as possible?" Yunyang had longed for power for far too long. Without power, there was nothing he could do. The seedling swayed slowly as if it was shaking its head in disdain. Yunyang finally understood after asking for a long time. The cultivation base that he had lost would probably not return. After the lotus seed had melted into his blood and devoured all of his cultivation base, it had then sprouted vitality and waited for the air of injustice to naturally sprout. Besides, the seedling had another meaning. Your original strength is rubbish. You might as well not have it. Yunyang did not know whether to laugh or cry. Fine. Let's start from the beginning. Calling you Tender Sprout or Lotus of Fate all the time is too awkward. Why don't I give you a new name? Yunyang suggested. You have the shape of a vine, and you have flowers and leaves. Tung Tung? Man Man? Flower? Yi Yi? Lien Lien? Emmy? The seedling only swayed vigorously in disagreement. However, when the last name Emmy appeared, it stopped swaying. After a while, it actually nodded its sprout. It actually acknowledged this name? Yunyang felt a headache coming on. Out of so many names, the one that he thought was the most unpleasant and difficult to accept was probably Emmy. That was why he had put it last. Who would have thought that this name that he thought was extremely unpleasant would be acknowledged instead? Emmy. Oh my God. Emmy. Yunyang slapped his forehead, speechless. What a disgusting name I've come up with. In his subconscious, Emmy danced happily. A thin vine was curled into various shapes to celebrate that it finally had a name. Emmy. Yunyang said, breaking down, you have to think of something. The person in my room has to come back to life. Emmy was stunned for a moment before its vine danced again. Chapter 22. Yunyang stared at the unconscious man on the bed. This was a burly fellow, tall and well-built. Just by looking at the length of him lying on the bed, One could tell that he would be a mighty man once he stood up. Yunyong could not help sighing as he examined the man carefully. It was not easy for this fellow to live until now without taking this lying down. At least 20% of his bones were broken. His internal organs were almost torn apart. His dantian was shattered, and his head had obviously been hit hard as a patch of his scalp was dented. There were countless claw marks on his shoulders and back, each one so deep that his bones could be seen. There were even 2 penetrating sword wounds on his chest and back. To be able to hold on to such injuries before fainting in Tiantang City. Yunyong frowned. He should be an expert on the same level as Lao Mei, or maybe even higher. He placed his hand on the man's wrist and called out in a low voice, "Emmy!" Immediately, a gush of refined air of vitality gushed out from the lotus of endless fate and entered the man's body with his hand as a medium. Emmy reluctantly cut off the supply, swaying gently. No matter how Yunyong urged, it refused to send any more. Enough, it's enough. Not only is he a thief, he's also a miser. Yunyong was speechless. However, the air of vitality that Emmy had sent out was strong. Although it was only a small amount, Yunyong could clearly feel that the man's breathing had become much heavier and his pulse had become stronger. Even his complexion looked much better. Yunyong cultivated as he waited for the man to wake up. The 1,000 illusion monkey and the 5 kittens were all crowding around him. A monkey, a lightning cat, and 4 high-level baby beasts were actually united and friendly, as if they were a family. They were so tightly packed that not even wind could get through. After a long time, the man on the bed let out a weak, suppressed voice. "Where is this?" Yunyong stopped cultivating. He opened his eyes. The man had already woken up and opened his eyes. His eyeballs moved with difficulty as he surveyed his surroundings. "This is my home. You've just woken up from your severe injuries. Rest well," Yunyong said. "Thank you," the man said softly. "No need." Yunyong stood up. "It's just a small effort. Take care of yourself." He walked out as he spoke. Although he knew that this man could be an expert, Yunyong did not want to be overly friendly before he knew his background and personality. Beneath the pergola, Yunyong poured a pot of tea and sipped it slowly. In the room next door, Lao Mei was obviously cultivating. Waves of mystical qi rippled in the air. The sun hung in the sky like blood. Ji Ling's lithe figure appeared beside him. She asked curiously, "Are you daydreaming here alone?" Yang said, "Because I knew that you would be looking for me." Ji Ling was stunned for a moment before she laughed mockingly. "You could have just said that you were protecting your housekeeper, but you said that I would definitely look for you." "Yun Ling Ling, Yun Yang you need to be. Since you're not looking for me, why are you here at this time?" Yun Yang asked without batting an eyelid. Ji Ling was stunned and could not help but stomp her foot bitterly. "Fine, I was indeed looking for you." Yun Yang raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Ji Ling snorted. "There are only a few things that I don't understand." Yun Yang said, "There are 3 things that you don't understand, do you?" Ji Ling replied, "Oh, do you know what I don't understand?" Yun Yang pursed his lips and said faintly, "The first thing is, why did I suddenly clash with Shiman Wan Dai? With my eyesight, experience and intelligence, there's no way that I couldn't tell that Shiman Wan Dai came from an extraordinary background before he announced his name. Why did I insist on clashing with him? Am I right?" Ji Ling was surprised. "That's right, indeed. You don't seem like such a reckless person." Yun Yang smiled faintly and said, "The second thing that I don't understand is that after Shiman Wan Dai revealed his identity, you didn't back down and insisted on the bet. Furthermore, you took all the bets and offended the Shiman family. Am I right?" Ji Ling was even more surprised. "That's right. Your third question should be, I obviously don't have a 9th level mystical beast cub, but I lied to Shiman Wan Dai and made him fall into the bet. Furthermore, many people know that I have a 9th level mystical beast, and these people are all dangerous people. This has undoubtedly put myself and the residents of Yun in an extremely dangerous situation. It could be said that we are at the center of a storm. But why? Am I right?" Yun Yang spoke calmly and methodically. "These people know that I have a 9th level mystical beast cub and will definitely think of ways to snatch it away. With my current ability, I won't be able to protect it no matter what. I might even lose the lives of my entire family. Why would I do this? Am I right?" A faint smile appeared on Yun Yang's face. Under the moonlight, his smile was as pure as the moon itself. Jiling was even more surprised and anxious. She said, "That's right. You know it very well, but you still did it. What's the reason? How can you defend yourself against the 8 noble families? If this isn't suicide, then what is?" Yunyang was still smiling and did not speak. Why? Jiling was extremely anxious. She had not been able to figure it out at the time and had always thought that Yunyang had a deeper meaning. However, even now, she still could not figure out the reason or how Yunyang would deal with it. She could not help but jump out to ask about it. She did not expect this fellow to still be so half-dead. It was infuriating to look at him and make one want to give him a good beating. "Even if I can't defend myself, I still have you, don't I?" Yunyang smiled. "I don't care," Jiling said angrily. "It can't be that, tell me quickly." "You want to know?" Yunyang finally turned around and looked at her seriously. "Yes." Jiling did not hide her curiosity. "But I'm not going to tell you." Yunyang smiled warmly. "You." Jiling finally lost it and kicked a stone stool away. "Ah." Yunyang smiled. Of course, from Jiling's point of view, Yunyang's smile was asking for a beating. Yunyang's heart was filled with helplessness. Offending the Shiman family and releasing the news of a 9th-level mystical beast cub was, of course, his intention. However, he could not reveal his true intentions now. If I want to deal with a colossus like the Four Seasons Tower, I have to become stronger first. This was Yunyang's unwavering belief. Ever since he knew about the existence of the Four Seasons Tower, since he knew that his 800 subordinates and 8 brothers had died under the Four Seasons Tower scheme, Yunyang had decided what he had to do. A direct confrontation was out of the question. Even if the 9 Supremes were resurrected and gathered together, they would not be a match for the mysterious Four Seasons Tower. Even if the entire empire of Yutong were to go against the Four Seasons Tower, this mysterious organization could not be uprooted, because they had never appeared in front of people. You have no idea who is from the Four Seasons Tower. Since this was the case, Yunyang had decided on his current course of action. I am Supreme Cloud. This identity cannot be exposed. However, Yunyang's life is too comfortable. Since this is the case, I shall place myself in the midst of the turbulent waves. If I were to be smashed to pieces in the turbulent waves, then I would accept it. However, if I could carve a path out of the turbulent waves, I would be strong enough by then. Moreover, the words 9th-level mystical beast would attract countless aristocratic families and cause countless disputes. These were all cards that he could use to his advantage. It all depended on how he would balance it out. The corners of Yunyang's lips curled into an enigmatic smile. Your father has done too many things like walking a tightrope on a cliff. On the same night, the 7 noble young masters gathered in Yunyang's courtyard. Indeed, not one of them was absent, and all of them were very excited. This was definitely not an act. The news that Yunyang had just made a fortune was definitely not a secret. I have summoned you all here because I have a deal to discuss. Yunyang raised his cup with a smile. Before we discuss, I would like to have a toast first, to wish for a happy cooperation. Cheers! The 7 noble young masters emptied their cups in one gulp. I have just 127th-level mystical pills, as you all know, 500 mystical stones and 30 mystical crystals. Yunyang smiled. Of course, I want to keep 300 mystical stones, so there are still 200 that I need you all to help me sell. I want to keep 20 mystical crystals, and I need your help for the remaining 10 as well. The eyes of the 7 noble young masters lit up abruptly. What a huge fortune! All these, I only need gold, 3 million taels. The rest of the profits will be divided among the 7 brothers. Yunyang smiled and said, I have blackmailed you all a few times. This time, I will give you all some benefits. His words were straightforward. However, the more straightforward he was, the brighter the eyes of the 7 young masters shone. Even if these items were not auctioned, it would be totally worth it to keep them in their hands. 2 7th-level mystical pills alone were worth 1,000,000 gold taels, and that was the lowest valuation. There were also 200 mystical stones, each valued at 10,000 gold taels. It was also a stable matter, and once the news spread, they could all be sold immediately. As for the remaining 10 mystical crystals, it was a pure profit. In this transaction, Each of the 7 of them would earn more than 200,000 gold taels. It was equivalent to Yunyang giving each of them millions of silver taels. And this was the lowest estimate. After the surprise, they were confused. They were used to being blackmailed by Yunyang. When had they ever seen him so generous? Why did he suddenly change this time? Young Master Yun, why? Young Master Ling's mouth was wide open in confusion. This seems like you are at too much of a disadvantage. Let's earn the money together. Yunyang smiled warmly. I have spent so much of your money, so what is there to be surprised about? It's not like I am at a disadvantage or not. Of course, other than that, some of your family's channels have to help me when I need it. That is enough. What do you think? The 7 young masters looked at each other, immediately knowing what each other was thinking. They nodded in unison. Deal. Although they all knew that this young Master Yun would never be at a disadvantage in anything he did. However, he was giving out such a huge profit only to ask for their family channels to help him when the time came. This transaction must be done no matter what. Even if the benefits of what Yunyang asked them to do would far exceed the profits that they had gained this time, this promise was still a must. When the time came, they would have to help as well. Yunyang smiled in satisfaction. It's that simple. Yunyang said, regarding the 3 million gold taels, you can use 2 methods. The first is to give me a portion first and the rest after you have sold it. The second is even simpler. The 7 families will pool their resources and give me all 3 million gold taels. After that, I don't care how you sell it or how much you sell it for. The 7 of them looked at each other again. Yunyang's words had a deeper meaning. He would care about the first. He would let go of the second. This was the hidden meaning. Who would be willing to be hindered when doing something? We choose the second. Young Master Ma jumped up. Young Master Yun, the gold taels will be sent to you tonight. Very well. As for how these resources would be divided among the 7 families, it was not Yunyang's concern. He was only in charge of bringing these items out. For the entire night, the 7 noble young masters engaged in a war of words, arguing until their faces were flushed. In the end, they shook hands reluctantly and glared at each other before smiling obsequiously at Yunyang and went home to prepare the gold. The guards of each family had already gathered in front of the residence of Yun. How could they go home with such a huge amount of wealth in their pockets? Even if it was a peaceful era, the 7 young masters would not have the guts to do so. Before the second half of the night, 3 million gold taels were already in Yunyang's hands. It was all real gold, no banknotes or banknotes. Yunyang did not want that. The gold was glistening and piled up like a mountain. Chapter 23. I really don't know what to say about you. A mocking voice came from behind him. Yunyang did not speak. Should I say that you're stupid or foolish? Jiling sighed from behind Yunyang. No matter how foolish one is, no one would do what you've done today. Yunyang smiled faintly, not bothering to defend himself. You've actually exchanged an ocean's worth of cultivation resources, enough for an ordinary person to become an expert in the 3 peaks, for something as useless as gold. Jiling's gaze was as if she was looking at a super idiot. Do you know what you're doing? Perhaps she herself did not realize that her voice was tinged with confusion, doubt, anger, and disappointment. Disappointment. Of course I know what I'm doing. Yunyang did not turn around as he continued. That's why I said that you and I are people of 2 different worlds. Yunyang's voice was cold as well. Jiling could not hold it in any longer and said angrily, I don't understand why you're so short-sighted. What's the use of having so much gold? Even if you moved all the gold in the world to your own house, what's the use? Don't you know that in a mystical cultivator's heart, even a piece of mystical stone is more important than all the gold in the world? Because it can increase one's strength. It can increase one's ability to protect oneself, but gold cannot. Jiling took a deep breath to suppress her boiling emotions. She tried hard to restrain herself. I shouldn't be angry, this has nothing to do with me. But Jiling could not hold back her anger. She could not suppress it at all. Yunyang turned around calmly and looked into Jiling's angry eyes. After a long time he said coldly, What's the point of discussing this between people of 2 different worlds? Jiling choked. Perhaps to you, gold is useless, mystical stones and mystical crystals are useful. Yunyang's gaze was calm but cold as he said, But to me, gold is more useful than mystical stones. Gold can be used to buy rice, things to fill one's stomach. Mystical stones, on the other hand, cannot. Gold can be changed, mystical stones cannot. So we have two different ways of thinking. Yunyang said, "This is not up for debate. It's late. Rest early." He turned to leave. Jiling shouted from behind, "Then why don't you sell all the mystical stones and mystical crystals? Why are you only selling half of it? If I sell them all, wouldn't I be able to get more gold?" Yunyang chuckled bitterly in his heart. Why wouldn't I want to sell more? The problem was that Emmy had stolen them. Profound stones are naturally useful. They can make me stronger, but gold can feed the families of my dead brothers. When I didn't have the power or the capital. Jiling stormed back to her room to sleep. As she lay on the bed in her room, a phrase reverberated in her mind. People from two different worlds. People from two different worlds. So, they are people from two different worlds. Jiling thought to herself dejectedly, his views and values are different. Perhaps he has a point. What is there to argue about when it comes to the values of two different worlds? The second half of the night. A group of 12 men dressed in black came before Yunyang soundlessly. "Change all this gold into silver," Yunyang instructed in a low voice. His mood was somber, his gaze cold and unfathomable. No one knew what he was feeling at this moment. 1,000 silver taels for each of the 800 families. "Distribute them all tonight," Yunyang ordered in a low voice. "Yes, young master. Other than that, 100 silver taels for the families of the martyrs and veterans in Tiantang City." Yunyang continued to order. "Yes. I don't need to emphasize what to do I?" Yunyang looked at them coldly. "We will follow young master's orders. There will be no accidents, no disputes, and no robbery," the leader of the masked men in black said firmly. "All right, go ahead," Yunyang said. "Also, continue to pay attention to what I have instructed. Report to me if anyone crosses the line or violates the rules." "Yes." The men in black made a few trips to and fro before they transported 90% of the gold. According to their calculations, 90% was already a surplus. Yunyang threw the rest of the gold in the yard and returned to his room. The cold moonlight illuminated the backyard of the residence of Yun in a glistening yellow. It was a quiet night. On the second day, Jiling seemed to be angry. She stayed in her room to train the little silver moon celestial wolf, holding back her anger and refusing to come out to meet Yunyang. Yunyang was glad to have some peace and quiet. He first went to check on the heavily injured man, then he cultivated and practiced his saber. The seeds of trouble had been sown, they would come at any time. Yunyang had been prepared from this moment on. Old Marshal Qiu Zhenhan had just ended the morning assembly and returned to the residence of Yunyang with a heavy heart. There was news from the imperial court that the Empire of Dongxian and the Empire of Dayuan were restless. Their target was naturally the Empire of Yutong, the biggest piece of meat in the eyes of the other countries. The war had been going on for so many years, it had almost never stopped. If the war were to break out this time, the Empire of Yutong would not be optimistic. The old marshal heaved a long sigh. "Marshal, something strange happened last night." Sir Wang, the advisor of the residence of Yunyang and the old marshal's old friend, came in with a faint smile, his face calm and gentle. "What do you think it is?" Old Marshal Qiu sighed. "I am so frustrated right now. What is the point of guessing?" "What is it?" Sir Wang could sense that the old marshal was not in a good mood today, so he did not keep the old marshal in suspense anymore. Overnight, the entire Tiantang city was suddenly showered with gold rain again. The old marshal's eyes shone. At least more than half of the families of the 800 warriors who followed the 9 supremes to war last year suddenly had a large amount of silver taels appear in their homes. When they woke up, the silver taels would appear and no one knew where they came from. Sir Wang spoke slowly. "Once again, something like this has happened." The old marshal's gaze was strange. Not only that, but there were also many families of martyrs and veterans who had silver as well, as if someone was distributing it. Sir Wang was beaming. Old Marshal Qiu Zhenhan's eyes shone even brighter. "Brother Wang, from what you see, is there a possibility that someone from the 9 supremes is still alive?" Sir Wang thought about it and said, "This incident, does not prove that someone from the Nine Supremes is still alive. But the possibility is very high. The old marshal's gaze dimmed when he heard the first half of the sentence, but when he heard the second half of the sentence, his gaze brightened again. However, this person obviously doesn't want to expose himself, Sir Wang said, weighing his words. Qiu Zhenhan sighed and said, the death of the Nine Supremes is a huge conspiracy. Even with our nation's resources, we haven't found anything. If this person is really one of the Nine Supremes or someone related to the Nine Supremes, how would he dare to expose himself so easily? He waved his hand tiredly and said, let's follow the previous method. Don't care, don't ask. Then wipe away all these traces. Sir Wang nodded. All right. Let all the clues end here. The old marshal sighed, his voice sorrowful but resolute. Sir Wang said, I have already given the order. That's good. The old marshal closed his eyes sadly and said softly, is there anyone among the 9 of you still alive? If there is, even if you've been hiding and never appeared, I still hope that you can come and talk to me. This old man misses all of you very much. A few drops of tears seeped out from the corners of old Marshal Qiu's tightly shut eyes. Sir Wang sighed inwardly and retreated quietly. When he reached the door, he thought of something and said, Marshal, about the mystical beast tournament that the noble families have chosen to hold in Tiantang City this time. Qiu Zhenhan waved his hand with his eyes closed and said tiredly, let them be. Sir Wang knew that old Marshal Qiu was reluctant to say anything more, but he could not help saying, I heard that Marquis Yun's young master, Yun Yang, had a conflict with the Shiman family in the mystical beast market yesterday. He made a huge bet and won against the Shiman family's young master, almost losing all his fortune. Old Marshal Qiu Zhenhan heaved a deep sigh. Let them be about this. Marquis Yun's young master has never been law-abiding in Tiantang City all these years. Let Marquis Yun deal with this. Sir Wang thought about it and wanted to say that there was something fishy about the matter, but seeing how tired the old marshal was, he swallowed his words and retreated. However, after today, he no longer paid attention to such trivialities. A popinjay young master of Tiantang City, a popinjay young master of the Shiman family. What could he have done? In the east wing, the sound of heavy breathing could be heard. It was the heavily injured man trying to regulate his breathing, trying to channel his mystical qi to heal himself. Yun Yang was not surprised by this, taking it all in stride. Another door opened. Lao Mei walked out with light steps. Have you broken through? Not yet. But I've already taken that half step. Lao Mei was excited. I can definitely break through within half a month. I want to accumulate more so that I can charge forward more when I break through. Yun Yang nodded. Breaking through the bottleneck was only one aspect. As long as he had the feeling, it would not be difficult. More importantly, after breaking through the bottleneck, his cultivation base would welcome a huge leap. As for this leap, it would depend on the accumulation before the breakthrough. After all, Yun Yang did not have the kind of spiritual medicine that could strengthen one's foundation and allow one to advance by leaps and bounds. Young master, the injured fellow, doesn't seem to be simple. Lao Mei lowered his voice. He is. Yun Yang nodded. Does young master want to forge a good relationship? Lao Mei asked tentatively. Or subdue him? Yun Yang flashed a cold smile. This good karma can't be forged. Lao Mei was puzzled. Yun Yang shook his head with a smile. This man had risked his life and gone through so much to obtain 4 9th-level mystical beast cubs, but in the blink of an eye, they had fallen into Yun Yang's hands. How could such a good relationship be forged? Once the other party regained his ability, he would probably return the favor with ingratitude and snatch the 4 cubs away. I only want to subdue him for my use. Yun Yang said honestly, I'm short on manpower now. Lao Mei asked, what if you can't? Yun Yang looked at Lao Mei, a smile like spring water in his eyes as he said slowly, what do you think? Lao Mei felt as if he had been blown by a snowy wind, a chill running from his bones to his skin. If young master wants to subdue him, Lao Mei suggested, now that he's severely injured and can't move, it's the best time to subdue him. Yun Yang shook his head and said confidently, such methods are no longer suitable for such an expert. You have to use more ingenious methods. Yun Yang chuckled inwardly. An expert who can enter and exit the mystical beast forest alone, an expert who can fight or possibly win against a 9th-level mystical beast. How can he bow down to such worldly small favors? Ingenious methods? Lao Mei was stunned. Yunyang smiled. The so-called life-saving grace is repaid by burning one's body. Lao Mei, such a scenario only exists in legends. Take you for example. Now that you're severely injured and on the brink of death, you've been saved by another person who treats you well and cares for you meticulously. Would you become his servant because of this? So, legends are legends and stories are stories. As humans, we can't be so naive. Chapter 24. Lao Mei scratched his head awkwardly. He was already so old, but to be called naive by a 19-year-old young master. It was a little, however, Lao Mei did feel that compared to his young master, he was indeed a little naive. He had not felt anything for the past few years. Sometimes, he felt that his young master was a little mysterious and that he did not show his martial prowess. When he saw him, he always looked like he had nothing to do. Other than that, he often went missing. He would disappear for a few months at a time. He knew that his young master was extraordinary. But that was all. However, ever since his young master had returned a year ago, he had never gone missing again. His intuition as a martial artist told him that his young master was gravely injured and seemed to have lost all his cultivation base. Those injuries could threaten his life at any time. However, his young master did not seem to mind, still looking as idle as ever. Occasionally, late at night, he would see his young master sitting alone from afar, that desolation and loneliness, as well as the occasional glint of coldness in his eyes. It was to let him know that his young master had a huge secret in his heart. Lao Mei dared not ask what had happened. He knew that he would not say anything for his young master's sake. However, his young master's aura was getting stronger. The murderous aura that seemed like it was about to burst out and wreak havoc on the world seemed to be getting stronger as well. Lao Mei suddenly realized something. His young master's calculation ability had exceeded his imagination. There seemed to be nothing he could not see through, nothing he could not solve. It was like playing chess. An ordinary person would be considered an expert if they could see 3 to 4 steps ahead. But his young master could see more than 10 steps ahead and was still not satisfied. Everything his young master had done in the past year seemed to have a deeper meaning. Yet he could not see through it at all. Young master said that I was naive. But it seemed like I really was a little. But what method was young master going to use to subdue this gravely injured person in the East Wing? These 5 kittens. Lao Mei looked at the 5 snow-white kittens that followed closely behind Yunyang and coughed, stroking his beard. One day of carelessness and the house would turn into a zoo. Let's just think of them as lightning cats. Yunyang said, "They're quite cute." Cute. Hearing such words from his young master, who was already a scheming man in his heart, Lao Mei suddenly felt that his worldview was not normal. The 1,000 illusion monkey sat on Yunyang's shoulder. The little fellow was still following Yunyang closely these few days, but it was obviously not as lively as before. Moreover, as long as the 4 kittens were below, the 1,000 illusion monkey wouldn't come down. A pair of eyes, full of vigilance. If it were not for her reluctance to leave Yunyang's side, she would have fled long ago. Even though it was only a rank difference, the 1,000 illusion spirit monkey still felt threatened by the difference in rank. However, no one noticed this. Yunyang had already secretly checked on the 4 eclipse panthers. One of them was already a 4th-level mystical beast while the other 2 were 3rd-level mystical beasts. The last one was slightly weaker, but it was already at the 2nd level. It was just that these little fellows were obviously under the bloodline invisibility spell. That was the greatest love that high-level Xian beasts had for their offspring. They would use their own bloodline to create a layer of camouflage on their young beasts, making others think that they were very inconspicuous and weak Xian beasts. In this way, before they grew up, no one would have any ideas about them. That would be much safer. However, this kind of bloodline invisibility could only be performed by 9th-level Xian beasts at the very least. Yunyang was completely sure. However, he was like the parents of these 4 little fellows, unwilling to remove the bloodline invisibility spell for them. If he were to remove it, and people found out that he had 4 9th-level mystical beast cubs by his side every day and that he was so weak, Yunyang was sure that he would not live for more than 2 hours. For safety's sake, continue being cats. Yunyang stroked the 4 eclipse panthers' furry heads, causing 4 tiny pink tongues to chase after his hand, tickling it. The only real lightning cat was meowing. It had not recovered yet and was curled up in a corner, unable to compete for Yunyang's attention. Yunyang chuckled. Yes, there's one more here. He stroked the lightning cat's head as well. The little fellow lay down contentedly, turning over to reveal its white tummy. As usual, another little fellow sent a stream of chi of life over. Immediately, the ground was filled with little snow-white fur balls rolling around happily. The 1,000 illusion monkey squeaked anxiously on his shoulder. Yunyang sent one over helplessly as well. Feeling that his pitiful spiritual chi was running low, he quickly stopped. However, the 1,000 illusion monkey was already satisfied. Finding an opening, it leaped down from Yunyang's shoulder and sprinted towards Ji Ling's room. Suddenly, Yunyang felt as if there were two sharp gazes staring at him. Turning his head, he saw a person's head poking out from the window of the east wing. His eyes were like two bolts of lightning. Yunyang chuckled and turned to walk towards the east wing. The person had already sat up and was leaning against the headboard. Seeing Yunyang enter, he forced a smile. Yunyang noticed that this person's hair was no longer as messy as it had been when he had fainted yesterday. It had even been tidied up. Although it was only a simple comb, it was obvious that this person was very mindful of his appearance. Yunyang also noticed that this person's hands were very clean. He had just woken up from a coma, but there was not a single speck of dirt between his fingernails. Can you help me wipe my face? This was the first thing the person said after smiling at Yunyang. Cold water will do. Yunyang nodded. Sure. He turned and brought in a basin of cold water. He soaked a towel in, wrung it dry, and applied it to the person's face. When the moisture had almost completely seeped in, he took it off and soaked it again before applying it to the person's face. After doing this 5 times, he started to wipe the person's face with a corner of the towel. The person remained calm throughout the entire process. You are very young, he said quietly, but you know how to take care of others. But I heard that person call you young master. So you are not a person who takes care of others, but you do. This is a large residence in Tiantang City. There aren't many people here, and I don't see any maids or guards. Also, I heard a woman's voice call you Yunyang. The person said, looks like you are the young master of Marquis Yun in Tiantang City? Yunyang? But you are the young master of a marquis. How would you know how to take care of others? The person asked. Yunyang wiped the person's face and said faintly, you are not young. Even when you were heavily injured and on the brink of death, you still look to be in your 40s. But your real age should be above 80 years old. In this world, 80 years old and above is considered an old man. Although 80 years old is the prime of your life with your cultivation base, it is not easy for an 80-year-old man in the eyes of the common people to have such a strong curiosity. Also, you are very clean and pay attention to your appearance. I can see that even if you were to die, you want to die cleanly. There are not many people like you in this world. But the part that you pay the most attention to is your hands. Yunyang wrung the towel. Although you have been unconscious for a long time, your nails have grown naturally, but they are still very neat. It looks like you are very careful when you are resting. The inside of your right thumb, index finger, and middle finger are softer than other places. Under normal circumstances, this is where you use the most force. If you are a martial artist, you will have calluses whether you practice with a saber or a sword, but you don't. It is not that they have not grown before, but when you have cultivated to a certain level and entered the innate realm, your entire body has been cleansed and regenerated the weakest part of your body. That is why they are more delicate than other places. Your left index finger and middle finger do not show any signs of force being exerted. It is obvious that your left hand has always been pinching the sword. You have not practiced other palm or fist skills, or else there would be traces. You are a very strong person, so you are used to talking down to others. But when you speak, it is filled with a sharp aura. So, you are a swordsman. But there are signs of your left shoulder being raised, and the back of your shoulder is habitually pressed over the years. Therefore, your sword is not worn on your waist, but on your left shoulder. This position must be the best place for you to strike. That is why there is such a condition on your left shoulder. Half of the mystical qi cultivation base in your body has been converted into sword qi. Yunyang continued. So, other than your sword you have nothing else. Your gaze is very sharp. It is a habit of staring at the tip of a sword. You practice your sword by staring at the tip of your own sword. So, even when you do not use a sword, when you have no sword in your hand, when you are severely injured and unable to use your strength, you will still have this kind of threatening aura. But your gaze is straight and clear. So, you are not a malicious person, and you are not someone who will do anything to achieve your goal. Your sword is not with you, and the web between your thumb and index finger on your right hand is severely torn. The bone is broken, so I guess your sword is broken. No sword, and you are unwilling to reveal your identity. I cannot guess your exact identity. Swordsman, never trained in anything else. Carrying a sword, striking with a strange sword technique, very upright, doesn't steal or rob, loves cleanliness, pays attention to appearance, relies on the strength of both hands to make a living, but you are definitely a martial artist, not belonging to any country. On the surface, you don't seem to be related to assassins, and you are very skilled. Yunyang said, according to what I know, there are a total of 3 people like you. The man's gaze was filled with amazement as he could not help asking, which 3? One of them is already dead. Yunyang said, if it is him, I can recognize him even if he is burnt to ashes. The other one is a legendary figure, a pinnacle expert. Such an expert would not be injured like this. As for you, you are related to mystical beasts. So, there is only one person who fits your identity. Yunyang smiled and said, the famous mystical beast hunter, fealty jade sword Feng Mafei. Old Sir Feng, am I right? The severely injured man on the bed was already staring at Yunyang with wide eyes, as if he had seen a ghost. He had always kept a low profile and was not well known. He had always been a lone ranger and had no friends, so there should not be many people who knew him. However, this youth in front of him did not know him, had never seen him before. He was also severely injured and could not move, and his appearance had been altered. Yet, he had been able to recognize him with just a pair of eyes. He knew that this youth had not observed him in detail before this. He had only observed and analyzed him to be able to recognize him. Although the content was slightly repetitive and messy, the final result was correct. This was simply inconceivable. Feng Mafei had never known that there were so many flaws in him. He knew that the reason why this young man had said so much to verify his identity was because he had deduced his identity the moment they met. That was why he had done so. He had used a seemingly meticulous deduction to deduce this youth's identity the moment they met. He had only wanted to gain the upper hand by making a show of strength, to intimidate this seemingly inexperienced fellow. He wanted to establish his image as an expert who could foresee everything, to pave the way for him to recuperate here in the future. Chapter 25. Feng Mafei stared for a long time, unable to catch his breath. What amused Yunyang was that this great swordsman Feng had fainted with his eyes wide open. His body was too weak after all. Under the intense shock, he couldn't take it anymore. So, he fainted in embarrassment. Why is it that when people interact with others, they always have to think of ways to gain a psychological advantage? Yunyang murmured. Feng Mafei had used his intelligence to find out Yunyang's identity when he could not move. He had wanted to gain the upper hand. What Yunyang was going to say next was also to gain a psychological advantage. In the yard, Jiling had already walked out with the Silver Moon Celestial Wolf. The tiny snow-white Silver Moon Celestial Wolf followed behind her, tumbling all over the place. It was obvious that it was very dependent on her. These children of noble families are extraordinary indeed. Yunyang looked out the window and thought to himself, it's only been a night and they've made the Silver Moon Celestial Wolf, who is known to be rebellious and wary of others, feel a sense of belonging. Yunyang, Jiling called out from the yard. These cats of yours are strange. Yunyang looked at the cowering Silver Moon Celestial Wolf in the yard, then at the 4 Eclipse Panthers lying on the ground, snoring. The corners of his mouth twitched. Yunyang went out. Looking at Jiling, who seemed to have reverted to her original self, Yunyang smiled faintly. He could feel the difference in Jiling after she had readjusted her mentality during this period of time. It was a faint sense of alienation. 2 different worlds. Yunyang smiled inwardly and walked out as if nothing had happened. What is it? Why doesn't my wolf dare to go over? Jiling asked. Wolves are social animals and are used to moving around in packs. This one is small, has no companions and has never battled before. It would be strange if it dares to go over when facing 5 cats of similar size. Yun rolled his eyes. Then how do you plan to help me win? Jiling asked. That is a secret. Yun said lazily. I can only guarantee your victory. Also, you have to promise me that you will not go back on your word. Jiling rolled her eyes and said, You are so stingy. All right, I'll remember it. Looking at the young silver moon celestial wolf, Yun squatted down and beckoned. Little fellow, come here. It won't listen to you so easily. Jiling smiled. I spent a lot of effort yesterday. Before he could finish his sentence, he was suddenly dumbfounded. The tiny silver moon celestial wolf suddenly straightened its body and looked at Yun, its tail wagging like a puppy. Then, it sprinted towards Yun like an arrow. It was even purring excitedly. Jiling was stunned. This is too infuriating. He had worked so hard to please her, and even took out his most precious elixirs. Finally, the little fellow had changed from being indifferent to being somewhat affectionate. But this guy just hooked his finger, and the little guy actually ran over happily as if he had seen his own mother. There was no justice in this world. Yun carried the silver moon celestial wolf, his right hand gently caressing its back. Then, with a flutter, he flipped the small body over and dangled it in the air with only its left front paw in his hand. He even shook it forcefully. What are you doing? Jiling shrieked and was about to rush forward. How dare you play with such a small cub? You could kill it if you used too much force. The little silver moon celestial wolf howled excitedly, shaking its head and tail happily while being held by one paw. Yun tossed it into the air like a ball. His right hand stretched out, grabbing its right front paw and swinging it in the air. Jiling was speechless. The ball-like wolf cub flew in the air again, its left rear paw. It flew again. Its right rear paw. Then it flew again. Its neck. Jiling was about to go crazy. This is a wolf, not a cat. What do you mean by grabbing the back of its neck and swinging it around like this? Jiling could clearly hear the bones in the wolf cub's body cracking. My little wolf cub. Jiling's eyes were red from heartache. Finally, she saw Yun toss the wolf cub into the air again. This time, he grabbed its tail and shook it violently. The wolf cub shrieked and danced excitedly. Its 4 snow-white hooves clawed wildly in the air. It was so lively. Yun. Jiling could not bear it any longer. Are you playing tricks with my wolf cub? Yun turned his head and smiled. Can't you see that this little fellow is going crazy with joy? Jiling was speechless. All right. Yun said, leave your little Bei-shi with me for 2 days. You can take it to the competition after 2 days. If you can't win then, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Of course, if you win, you have to fulfill the conditions you promised me. Jiling could not help but sigh. Do you have to keep talking about conditions? Yun said with a smile. It's better to be practical. Jiling was deep in thought. After a long time, she carried the 1,000 illusion monkey back to the room. Yun smiled as he carried the wolf cub into the room. Patting the little wolf cub's head, he said, I know you understand, little guy. That's it. Today, you helped your master win, so I'll give you another round as a reward. Do you understand? The wolf cub looked at Yun with sparkling eyes and wagged its tail. You don't understand? Yun's expression darkened. He grabbed the wolf cub by the scruff of its neck and picked it up like a rag. Do you understand? Carry it again if you win. Do you understand? The wolf cub blinked twice with its sparkling eyes. Suddenly, it raised its left front paw and lifted it up. Then, it raised its right front paw and lifted both its hind hooves. It turned around and faced Yun with its butt, its tail raised high. Putting it down, it hopped twice to indicate that it wanted to be picked up and shaken. Then, it looked at Yun with sparkling eyes. Oh, yes. Yun was exasperated. Oh, woo. The wolf cub howled in delight. The conditions had been met. Yun heaved a sigh of relief. The intelligence of mystical beasts was not low after all. However, this silver moon celestial wolf's intelligence had exceeded Yun's expectations. Looking at the wolf's clear eyes, Yun murmured, This can't be the descendant of the alpha wolf, can it? This girl's luck shouldn't be this good. May I ask if young Master Yun is at home? A booming voice came from outside. Lao Mei stood up in response. Who is it? The voice outside replied, Please inform young Master Yun Yang that Shiman Wandai of the Shiman family, Dongfang Ming Tian of the Dongfang family, Nangong Bubi of the Nangong family, and Bei Qing Kong of the Bei family are here to visit. Lao Mei's expression changed. Shiman Wandai, Dongfang Ming Tian, Nangong Bubi, and Bei Qing Kong. East, South, West, and North. Perhaps these 4 names were not very famous. At least, Lao Mei had never heard of them before. However, these 4 surnames were too shocking. 4 of the 8 pinnacle families. The one who had bet with the young master was Shiman Wandai. Shiman Wandai was the young master of the Shiman family. Thus, Dongfang Mingtian, Nangong Bubi, and Bei Qing Kong must be the young masters of the other 3 families. Although they might not be the backbone of the direct line of descent, their identities were still superior. With a wave of Yun Yang's hand, the 5 kittens obediently made their way to the east wing. Invite the 4 young masters in. Yun Yang said, tea will be served in the parlor. The parlor was, of course, the pavilion under the pergola in Yun Yang's courtyard. Shadows of flowers danced in the breeze, their fragrance permeating the ground. Yun Yang held the teapot with one hand and said in a composed manner, "It is my honor to have the 4 young masters grace my humble dwelling with your presence. This is the spring tea that I have just received this year. It is harvested from the peak of a snowy mountain, amidst the snowstorm and fog. The tender shoots of the ivy must be plucked when they are covered in a thin layer of frost, dried in the shade on the cold mountain, and roasted in a cool place. After 3 times of steaming and 3 times of drying, it is placed in the ice cave of the cold mountain to absorb the spiritual and icy air. Then, it is dried at high temperature and immediately becomes tea. Only this tea can't be kept for long. It can only be kept for a month. Otherwise, the cold air will return and the tea will be wasted." The translucent emerald tea in Yun Yang's teapot gushed out like a round jade and fell into the teacup, solidifying into a crystal-clear piece of jade. The surface of the tea was foggy, as if it was a dream. This tea is called Snow of the Cold Mountain. Yun Yang raised his cup and smiled. Please serve the tea." The 4 noble young masters had arrived at the residence of Yun, but before they could even say a word, they were instilled with the art of tea. Furthermore, it was explained in a logical manner, making it rather captivating. Tasting this cup of tea, they were filled with mixed feelings. In the west wing, Ji Ling watched from the window and sighed inwardly. She could vaguely feel that among the 5 people drinking tea in the parlor, Yun Yang, who was the weakest and had the least ability, was more like an elite of a noble family. That elegance, that bearing, that composure. It was many levels higher than the 4 noble young masters in front of her. It was simply incomparable. Ji Ling thought about it carefully. It seemed that even the backbone of the 8 noble families, the direct heirs, might not have Yun Yang's elegance and composure. That was the calmness in his bones. Young Master Yun is indeed elegant. Good composure. Dongfang Mingtian drank the cup of tea that he could not taste and smiled faintly. No wonder Brother Shiman lost to you. Hatred flashed in Shiman Wandai's eyes as he smiled faintly. A bet is a bet. Young Master Yun's victory is a testament to your ability, and I accept my loss wholeheartedly. Yun Yang smiled warmly. Young Master Shiman is too courteous, I was just lucky. Besides, young Master Shiman's magnanimity and easygoing manner have impressed me greatly. Ever since that day, I have always wanted to meet young Master Shiman and befriend you. As he said this, Shiman Wandai's expression relaxed a lot. Of course, all of you young masters are as famous as young Master Shiman. I would very much like to befriend you as well, Yun Yang said sincerely. No matter how disdainful the young masters were, they looked much better and the atmosphere became harmonious. Perhaps among all these people, only Ji Ling, who was eavesdropping from the window, understood the true meaning behind Yun Yang's words. I really hope to befriend all of you, so that I can get more benefits from you all. Looking at Yun Yang's sincere expression and the young master's humble words, Ji Ling almost burst out laughing. She felt more and more that these noble young masters were incomparable to Yun Yang, the young master of a secular country's marquis. It was strange indeed. These elites of noble families had received strict education since they were young and every word and action had been specially trained, yet they were not as composed and scheming as Yun Yang. Chapter 26. Ji Ling searched through her memories and could only think of a few people who could compare to Yun Yang's steady demeanor. Her own family's old forefathers, elders who were widely acknowledged to be exceptionally intelligent and had gone through countless hardships in the mortal world, and the think tanks of each family. There were not many people like them. However, Jiling knew very well how these people had managed to achieve their current achievements through experience. Countless battles of life and death, countless parting of life and death, countless heartbreaks, countless hopeless situations. Only then could a person be trained to be calm and collected no matter what he faced. No matter who he faced, he would be neither servile nor overbearing. No matter what he faced, he would be far-sighted. No matter how good or bad the situation was, his heart would be as deep as a blue pool, unfathomable. However, Yun Yang was only 19 years old. How did he do it? Jiling was very curious about this. Yun Yang seemed to be full of secrets. Despite his young age, he was as steady and wise as a 1,000-year-old demon. His grace and demeanor were impeccable, and the way he treated people was flawless. However, no one could find a single flaw in Yun Yang from his manner of speaking, demeanor, and demeanor. We have come this time to witness young Master Yun's splendor. The real topic of conversation had finally begun. Bei Qing Kong was the first to speak. Secondly, we are naturally curious. Young Master Yun's shocking gamble that day, using a 9th-level mystical beast's infant as the wager, has shocked the world. He rubbed his hands together in embarrassment. I am ashamed to say this. Although we come from noble families, we have never seen a 9th-level mystical beast's infant. His words immediately garnered the agreement of the other 3 young masters. Yes, I have never seen one either. A 9th-level mystical beast is too mysterious, I would love to see it. Sigh, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have lost so badly that day. How can I not see it? Shiman Wandai was the last to speak, sighing. There was a tinge of helplessness in his voice. If it was possible, he would have come himself. However, the other 3 fellows followed him closely, refusing to let Shiman Wandai take the spoils for himself no matter what. If it weren't for these burdens, Shiman Wandai would have rushed over on the very afternoon he lost the bet. The few young masters were all smiles as they spoke, but the atmosphere in the air suddenly became oppressive. Jiling held her breath at the window, not knowing how Yun Yang would answer. These fellows were all smiles and amiable, but if Yun Yang could not produce the 9th-level mystical beast cub, the entire residents of Yun would be wiped off the face of this world. There would be no fluke. These people were actually here to denounce him. Or rather, they were here to divide the spoils. If Yun Yang could not produce a 9th-level mystical beast infant, he was doomed. Even if he took it out, he would still be dead. As long as he took it out, it would definitely cause the 4 young masters to fight over it. No matter who it ended up in, Yun Yang, the original owner, would not be able to survive. The current gentleness of these people was just the prelude to the storm. A 9th-level mystical beast's offspring. Yun Yang smiled. It is indeed something good. I find it hard to believe that the 4 young masters have not seen it before. However, I have not seen it before. It is true. As these words left his mouth, the atmosphere in the courtyard suddenly became icy cold. The air itself seemed to freeze. The expressions of the 4 young masters changed. You have not seen it before? Shiman Wandai's face turned the color of a pig's liver, his gaze turning frenzied. Taking a deep breath, he said darkly, Young Master Yun, I do not quite understand what you are saying. Since young Master Yun has not seen a 9th-level mystical beast infant, then what is it that you are betting with me? The other 3 young masters stared at Yun Yang without blinking. I have lost the bet. Of course I can produce it. Yun Yang was calm and even a little provocative, but now that I have one, so what if I say that I have not seen it before? Shiman Wandai felt a wave of anger rush to his head. If you have not seen it, then you do not have a 9th-level mystical beast infant. What right do you have to bet? Yun Yang smiled. First, I can win. As long as I win, that is enough. Second, young Master Shiman, who told you that not having seen it means that it does not exist? This sentence made everyone a little confused. Not having seen it did not mean that it did not exist? Dongfang Mingtian's expression changed as he retracted his icy smile, replaced with the warmth of spring. Brother Yun. Could it be that Brother Yun has another explanation? We'd like to hear it. Yun Yang smiled faintly and refilled the teapot, saying, Actually, I do not need to explain this matter. If I had made a bet with an ordinary person, a win is a win and a loss is a loss. Naturally, there would not be so many issues. However, since the few young masters have come knocking on my door, I am afraid that it will be troublesome if I do not explain. I might as well waste my breath. Shiman Wandai's face was as red as a pig's liver as he said, "It is not that I am a sore loser, but I hate being deceived." Deceiving is a little too much. Yun Yang said seriously, "If young Master Shiman had won and I could not produce a 9th-level mystical beast infant, then that would be deceiving. The problem now is that young Master Shiman did not win." This is actually not important. Yun Yang said, please have some tea. To gamble, one must have the money to gamble. Without the money, it is a fraudulent bet. I believe this is what young Master Shiman is worried about." The young masters thought to themselves, who else would come if not worried about this? Isn't that obvious? "I have indeed not seen a 9th-level mystical beast infant," Yun Yang said with certainty. Yun Yang answered with certainty, "It's true. I've never seen it since I was young." Boom. Another explosion ensued. "No matter what you say, you still haven't F*King seen one." However, Yun Yang's tone was heavy as he said, "I have a 9th-level upper mystical beast egg that is currently incubating." Shiman Wandai felt as if he had punched the air with all his might. There was no need to mention the discomfort he felt. "Where is the mystical beast egg?" Nangong Booby asked with narrowed eyes. Yun Yang smiled faintly and glanced at him. The 4 noble young masters understood that the other party would not reveal such a matter so easily. If young Master Yun is unwilling to reveal it, could it be that there really isn't one? Bei Qingkong said sarcastically. "Young Master Bei does not need to provoke me. I will say what I need to say." Yun Yang smiled. "It's just that I do not wish to clash with the noble families, or rather, I do not wish for the young masters to send themselves to their deaths." Send themselves to their deaths? Shiman Wandai chuckled coldly. "Young Master Yun, aren't you a little too arrogant?" Yun Yang looked at Shiman Wandai meaningfully. "Would young Master Shiman be willing to bet with me again?" There was a hint of disdain in his eyes. Facing the 4 noble young masters, there was actually a hint of arrogance and provocation. Shiman Wandai's face paled. Bet again? If he were to lose again, he would not be able to live anymore. Dongfang Mingtian quickly tried to smooth things over, laughing. "If we were to bet again, we would really become gamblers. Brother Yun, since we are here, don't keep us in suspense. We all want to be friends with Brother Yun. It would be bad for both parties if there were any misunderstandings, don't you think?" In his heart, however, he was thinking, "Is this fellow threatening us? Where does he get his confidence from?" Yun Yang's smile was meaningful as he said, "That's right. It would not be good for anyone if there were to be a conflict. I was too impulsive in the matter of the 9th-level mystical beast's offspring." Yun Yang said slowly, "I regretted it the moment the words left my mouth. I wanted to admit defeat to Brother Shiman and stop the bet. I could just say that I didn't have it, and the matter would have passed without so much trouble. It's a pity." Everyone's gazes fell on Shiman Wandai's face, causing him to flush red. He was the one who had insisted on the bet, his eyes turning red when he heard about the 9th-level mystical beast's offspring. "This involves a secret of the Yun family," Yun Yang said. "I won't go into the details, but this 9th-level mystical beast's egg is the egg of a golden-winged bird. The egg of a golden-winged bird." The 4 noble young masters' breathing quickened. It was said that one of the strongest mythical beasts in this world was the rock golden-winged bird. Its magical power was boundless, and it could destroy heaven and earth. Of course, it only existed in ancient legends and no one had ever seen it. This golden-winged bird was not the rock golden-winged bird, but a mystical beast with a thin trace of mythical bloodline. Once it matured, it would be a 9th-level upper-level mystical beast. What was even rarer was that it was a flying mystical beast. My master has always wanted to find a stronger mystical beast's offspring for me. Firstly, it would accompany me as I grow, and secondly, it would allow me to protect myself after he passes away. Yun Yang said slowly. There was a hint of admiration on his face. "Your master?" Dongfang Mingtian caught on to the main point. "May I ask who Brother Yun's master is?" Dongfang Mingtian asked. Yun Yang pondered for a moment, then reached into his robes and took out a small black wooden token, placing it lightly on the table. Everyone looked over and saw that the small black wooden tablet was completely black, but upon closer inspection, it seemed to have a faint luster. As they continued to look, it seemed to be twinkling faintly like starlight. It seemed to be an ancient starry sky, and in the farthest place, there seemed to be a flickering luster. Stellar wood of onyx? Dongfang Mingtian shuddered. That's right, it is the stellar wood of onyx, also known as the stellar veil of onyx. Yun Yang's tone was deliberately indifferent as he continued. My master's handwriting is on it. Young masters, please keep it in your hearts when you see it. Today, I have no choice but to show this token, and it is already a great insult to my school. If word of this were to spread, I'm afraid my master will be very angry. The four noble young masters could feel the undisguised threat in Yun Yang's words. They felt an inexplicable sense of oppression. It was as if this small black wooden token weighed more than 1,000 catties, and it was filled with endless authority. Ever since Yun Yang took out this small wooden token, Dongfang Mingtian and the others had no more doubts. The stellar wood of onyx was a rare treasure in this world. What was even rarer was that only one tree had appeared in this world in the past millions of years. And there was only one person who owned and used this tree. Other than this person, no one else could come into contact with the stellar wood of onyx. Therefore, once the stellar wood of onyx appeared, it represented that person. The wooden token turned slowly, and the 4 sentences behind it pierced into the eyes of the 4 noble young masters like lightning. At this moment, all 4 of their pupils shrunk abruptly. The 4 little faces turned completely white with a swoosh. Early as a guest from the heavens, half a step into the ethereal realm, but for the sake of a beauty, 1 step behind the rosy clouds. Only these 4 sentences. Other than that, there was no other identification. However, as long as these 4 sentences were present, it was enough in the Tianxian continent. This meant that this person was an earth-shattering figure. Furthermore, he was someone that even the 8 noble families like the Dongfang and Shiman families could not afford to offend. The only legend in this world. He was a legend who could break through the void and ascend to the upper realm 500 years ago. He had once dominated the Tianxian continent for 300 years without a rival. He was number 1 in the heaven leaderboard. Chapter 27. Legend had it that Dugu Cho was invincible and lonely in the mortal world. However, just as he was about to break through the void, he met a peerless beauty. He fell into the trap of love. Unfortunately, this beauty was physically weak and could not cultivate. Dugu Cho took good care of her and spent 10 years with her. Finally, the beauty passed away. Heartbroken and disheartened, Dugu Cho went into seclusion. He built a hut beside his dead wife's grave. The only stellar wood of onyx in this world was behind his dead wife's grave. It was like a giant umbrella that covered the sky, covering the grave and the grass. If I had been a heavenly guest, I could have been a heavenly guest. Half a step into the ethereal realm. As long as I wanted to, I could have taken the other half step, but for the sake of the beauty, I was too late. That was how it was. Since then, the world had never seen Dugu Cho again. However, there were too many legends about Dugu Cho in this world. Later on, Tianxian continent was filled with experts, deified and legendary experts, but no one's reputation could surpass Dugu Cho's. Titles such as the unrivaled expert or unrivaled swordsman would change every few years, but no one dared to claim the title of unrivaled expert of the age. In the human realm where there was no first in literature and no second in martial arts, this was the one and only legend. Looking at the plaque, recalling the legend and the name, the 4 young masters were completely dumbfounded. They could only feel their heads buzzing. 4 pairs of eyes stared at Yun Yang with wide eyes, shock written all over their faces. Legend had it that the stellar wood of onyx was the symbol of Dugu Cho's identity. There was only one such piece in this world. Now, the onyx wood was in their hands. Dongfang Mingtian felt like his palm had been scalded by a piece of red-hot metal. He put the stellar wood of onyx down quickly, the smile on his face turning into an odd one. The 4 young masters' chuckles turned dry as well. Brother Yun. You and Senior Dugu? Yun Yang sighed, his face full of respect. This is the token my master gave me. It's also a greeting gift. Yun Yang's skills are lacking and I still have to rely on my master's name to stay alive. I've let my master down. The 4 young masters felt their minds go blank. What were they here for today? They were not here to make friends. Why would Dugu Cho suddenly appear out of nowhere? How were they supposed to play this 9th level profound beast cub? What to do with it? Dongfang Mingtian sucked in a breath of cold air as his face stiffened. Forcing a smile, he said, "This who would have thought? Cough cough, brother Yun, you have such a master. How could you?" He. Shiman Wandai came to a sudden realization. That's right, if you had such a master, why is your cultivation so low now? These were all young masters of aristocratic families. They were knowledgeable and could tell at a glance that Yun Yang's physique was not bad, but his cultivation base was extremely weak. Not to mention the experts of the 5 or 6 mountains, he probably hadn't even climbed half of the mountain yet. It was so weak that it was unimaginable. Yun Yang chuckled meaningfully and said, "Perhaps what all of you are more curious about is not this, but why Master would take me in as a disciple. Or perhaps he still has doubts about this matter." The 4 young masters shook their heads like rattledrums. No. It would be weird if he didn't. Yun Yang smiled and said, "My physique is not suitable for cultivation." Under the 4 pairs of dumbfounded gazes, Yun Yang said leisurely, "Mistress and I have the same physique." Oh. The 4 of them heaved a long sigh of relief. They finally understood. Why would an immortal of a generation accept such a useless disciple? So that was it. It was still the obsession in his heart. Although I'm blessed by the heavens, my meridians are a mess. I can't cultivate them, so. Yun Yang sighed dejectedly. Master has destroyed all my meridians. Now, they're growing again. I wonder how far they'll grow. It was for my safety that Master searched for 9th level mystical beast cub all over the world. Finally, he sent word 3 months ago that he had one. Yun Yang lifted his head to look at Shiman Wandai. "So I dared to bet with you. But I didn't dare to, and wanted to retreat. Young Master Shiman, have all your doubts been answered now?" Yes. Shiman Wandai was a little flustered. By now, the doubts in everyone's hearts had indeed all been resolved. Looking at Yun Yang, they could not help but feel conflicted. This fellow was very lucky to have a master whom no one could afford to offend, but it was a pity that he himself was a good-for-nothing. His master had taken him in as a disciple because of his inner demons. His meridians were the same as his mistress. To put it bluntly, he was only a test subject for his master. Even his meridians had been destroyed to cultivate again. All in all, Yun Yang was fortunate, but also unfortunate. The 4 young masters made their judgment at the same time. What Yun Yang said was true. Dugu Cho was really his master. Otherwise, the stellar wood of onyx would never be in his hands. In this world, only Dugu Cho could have the stellar wood of onyx. Furthermore, the wood had been found at his deceased wife's grave, so Dugu Cho had treated it like a treasure. Even if a nation's emperor or a martial world's most respected individual were to ask for it, he would never agree to it. In that case, the egg of the 9th level mystical beast, the golden-winged bird, should be real as well. In this world, other than Dugu Cho, they could not think of anyone else who could match the golden-winged bird's speed, let alone kill it and obtain its egg. Combined with Yun Yang's conflicted expression after being provoked on the day of the bet and regretting it later on, the 4 young masters were even more certain of the truth of the matter. If I had misspoken, I would have regretted it too. I would have rushed to deny it and ruin the bet. However, if that was the case, the family's original plan to deal with the residents of Yun could not be used. Therefore, the 4 young masters had decided on a strategy to deal with Yun Yang in their minds. They could not be too harsh with Yun Yang, but they could not be too close to him either. However, killing him was out of the question. Although Yun Yang's master was amazing, he obviously did not have a bright future. Everyone could see that. Dongfang Mingtian thought to himself, "Let's get along first, don't offend him, but don't get too close either. Wait until his 9th level mystical beast arrives and see if it's true. What if he's lying now? Wouldn't it be a joke for eternity if he were to get close to him?" Shiman Wandai thought, if his master is Dugu Cho, it's fine to lose to him. But it's impossible to get too close to him. It's also impossible to recoup the loss from his hands. Thinking of the loss, young Master Shiman's expression was rather ferocious. His eyes dotted around, his thoughts unknown. Nangong Booby looked like a brute, but he was thinking, if I can form a good relationship, even if I can't be related to Dugu Cho, just the identity of Dugu Chao's disciple, maybe, it's possible? But this young Master Yun's temperament is quite to my liking. If I can befriend him sincerely, it doesn't seem impossible. Bei Qingkong was thinking, if I wait for the 9th level mystical beast cub to arrive and kill Yunyang without anyone knowing, wouldn't the cub be mine? A 9th level mystical beast cub needs at least 100 years to grow. I'll hide it during this period of time. Dugu Cho isn't a god. How could he know? The 4 young masters each had their own thoughts. Yunyang had already kept the stellar wood of onyx token. Once the token was in his robe, it disappeared without a trace and turned into a saber embroidered on Yunyang's sleeve. How could Yunyang have the stellar wood of onyx token? He was not Dugu Chao's disciple either. However, Yunyang felt that it was no big deal to use this name to protect himself for a period of time with the ever-changing ability of the divine edge. Dugu Cho wouldn't know anyway. Besides, what could he do even if he knew? Yunyang could not care less. Even if the whole world is against me, I won't care. What more you, Dugu Cho? Although Yunyang tried to persuade them to stay, the 4 young masters still left. After a warm farewell and setting a date for their next meeting, the 4 young masters left. They had come with their heads held high and chests puffed out, but they left quietly and amicably. They had wanted to snatch the 9th level mystical beast cub first and then flatten the Yun family. Who would have thought that they would be shouldering a huge threat instead? Dugu Cho. Thinking of this name, the 4 young masters felt like they had been F***ed. To think that the 8 noble families were supreme. Although we 4 young masters were not the direct heirs of our families, in this continent, even the princes of the 5 empires had to be courteous when they saw us. Even cautious. Who would have thought that they would meet something like this today? For a moment, the 4 young masters were filled with resentment towards the person who had held the mystical beast tournament in Tiantang City this year. What city could you have held it in? Why did it have to be held in Tiantang City? What a shame. His prestige had fallen to the ground. King Hell. Looking at the silhouettes of the 4 young masters leaving, Yunyang squinted his eyes slightly, thousands of thoughts flashing through his mind. First, I stirred up a storm, then I brought out a god to suppress their restless hearts. However, the storm is still the storm, the source of the chaos is still in my hands. From today onwards, at least I, Yunyang, have a place in all of your hearts. That is enough. It seems that I can begin now? Just as the 4 of them left, Ji Ling jumped out and asked Yunyang with wide eyes, "Are you Senior Dugu Chao's disciple?" Her big, pretty eyes were filled with disbelief. Yunyang stroked his chin. "Show me your true face and I'll tell you." Ji Ling raised her head. "Who wants to know?" Yunyang was alarmed. He had managed to fool these fellows into leaving just now and the crisis had passed, but he was actually feeling a little unsettled. Had he been joking with his words just now? This would not do. With a thought, he changed the topic with a smile. "Is your wolf cub obedient now?" His words drew all of Ji Ling's attention as she said excitedly, "Not bad, what did you do?" "The cub is so obedient that I'm over the moon." Haha. As she spoke, she released the wolf cub and ordered it to perform actions and imitate her. She even ordered the cub to stand up, walk on its hind legs, walk on its front legs. Yunyang felt a little dizzy. Chapter 28. A woman's brain is truly the most inexplicable in this world. Yunyang murmured to himself. "I've named the wolf cub Little Yaya. What do you think?" Ji Ling asked excitedly. "Little Yaya?" The corners of Yunyang's lips twitched. His words insincere. "What a good name. That's great." Ji Ling's eyes widened, unable to rebuke this hypocritical and perfunctory fellow. However, she quickly grew excited again. "But with Little Yaya's current coordination, it'll be a piece of cake for me to win. I'm definitely going to be the big sister this time." "You're going to win?" Yunyang asked curiously. "Is the Mystical Beast Tournament a competition of pet training? How fun is that? You've made it sound so grand earlier." "Of course I'm going to win." Ji Ling was full of confidence. "Since you're going to win." Yunyang was puzzled. "Then why aren't you leaving? Why are you hanging around here?" Ji Ling's jaw dropped. The smile on her face froze. What a twist. She had never seen such an uncouth man. "Have you fallen for me?" Yunyang took a step back in fear. "Miss, I'm still young and—" "Go to hell." Ji Ling flew into a rage. Yunyang hugged his right leg and jumped up, baring his teeth. Why did you hit me when we were talking nicely? Jiling glared at him with her teeth clenched. Who's hanging on to you? I'll leave. Lowering her head, she dashed out with the wolf cub in her arms. Her eyes were rimmed red. This bastard. This, Sai. Yunyang called out from behind her. Jiling stopped in her tracks, her heart filled with hope. What else do you want? Aren't you going to chase me away? She thought that this fellow must be apologizing. Don't forget our deal. Yunyang said seriously, you have to do it if you win. It's very important. Jiling's body trembled violently as she flew out with a swoosh. From afar she said, I, Jiling, am not one to go back on my word. She had disappeared. There was a thick nasal sound in her voice. Yunyang stood quietly for a while and smiled faintly, murmuring, It's good that you remember. I was just afraid that you'd forget. Lao Mei stood behind Yunyang, sighing deeply as he watched Yunyang's silhouette, hugging his head with both hands. Young master, you're destined to be single for life. He could let him go, but why did he have to use such a method? Watching Jiling leave, Yunyang's eyes flickered and his expression darkened, as if he had suddenly put on a mask. He looked a little solemn. Young master. Lao Mei sighed softly behind him. You have hurt Miss Ji's heart. Yunyang exhaled and said faintly, There's nothing to be sad about. We're from two different worlds anyway. Little girls may not understand much, but I want to understand. Lao Mei was confused. Sensible? Yunyang said faintly, Lao Mei, what is Miss Ji's background like? You should be able to tell, right? Lao Mei nodded and sighed. You know what they have to face if they truly love each other, don't you? Yunyang asked. Lao Mei sighed again. Besides, at least for now, this Miss Ji has not taken a liking to me, has she? At most, it's just a vague and unformed feeling. I feel that this person isn't bad, quite interesting. But that's all there is to it? Yunyang said. Lao Mei sighed again. Yunyang was right. That was all there was to it. There was no liking or admiration. He just felt that she wasn't bad. However, this could develop. So, why should we continue to be entangled and look for trouble? Yunyang smiled, his gaze distant, calm and cold. Young master is right. Lao Mei still sighed inwardly. Yunyang said, So this, isn't it good? There was no ripple in his heart, but he thought to himself, My brother's death has yet to be avenged. My 8 brothers, 800 brothers' bones have yet to turn cold, and I haven't even figured out how to exact my revenge. What face do I have to talk about romance? Love between a man and a woman is an extravagant thing to me now. Yunyang's eyes suddenly glinted with a bloody light. I'll go out for a while. Lao Mei said. I'll go with young master. There's no need. Marquis Yun will be back soon. Lao Mei suddenly said, seeing that Yunyang was about to step out of the house. Oh. Yunyang responded with an oh and disappeared. Sigh. Lao Mei realized that other than sighing, there was nothing else he could do. He had followed Marquis Yun for 10 years, but he never knew when Marquis Yun had gotten married or when he had a son. It was only 3 years ago when he brought Yunyang back and said that he was his son. Lao Mei was dumbfounded then. Then, he stayed in Tiantang City and became the butler for 3 years. Of course, what baffled Lao Mei even more was that Marquis Yun had left after a month after bringing Yunyang home. There had been no news of him for 3 years. It was like he had disappeared. He did not care about his son at all. Yunyang, the son, did not seem to care about his father's departure either. He did not care. Lao Mei had never seen a second pair of such a strange father-son relationship in his life. This young master had been normal for the first 2 years. Other than disappearing for a few months, only 2 or 3 times a year, everything else was normal. However, this year, he was completely different from before. Yunyang walked with a flutter in his purple robe. His handsome face drew sidelong glances from the passers-by. Some young ladies stole a glance at him and blushed. He did not walk quickly. His steps were relaxed, exuding an indifference that came from his bones. His face was rosy, his demeanor calm. Coming out of the residence of Yun, he took a few turns and walked to the main street in the city, heading towards Tiantang Square. In front of the Heroic Spirit Pavilion, there were still countless people paying their respects. The smell of incense and candles almost filled the air. Yunyang followed the crowd and walked to the tombstone. Standing still, he lit the candles and held them in his hands, bowing respectfully to the ground. He did not get up for a long time. Brothers, please bless me to find the clues of my enemies soon and take my revenge. Brothers, please bless me to find the traitors in the imperial court as soon as possible and eradicate them. Brothers, your souls are not far away. Watch as I avenge you one by one. Don't worry, brothers. As long as I, Yunyang, am here, even if I have to go bankrupt, even if I have to plunder the world, I won't let your families suffer the slightest bit. Yunyang straightened himself and inserted the 3 incense sticks into the incense burner. Lifting his head to look at them, he turned and left without turning back. He quickly turned into a small path and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in a shabby slum. However, even though the people here looked poor, they were all very satisfied. Along the road, there were some white-haired old men sitting and chatting. Their weathered faces were filled with contentment and happiness. Laughter could be heard from time to time. Occasionally, 1 or 2 or 3 handicapped people could be seen. Some were missing an arm, some were missing an eye, some were missing a leg, and so on. They supported each other as they walked by the side of the road. Their scarred faces were filled with longing for life. Old Fourthly, has your family received any silver recently? Yes, I have. What about you? We have too. I really don't know which philanthropist is so generous. This silver. It makes my heart tremble. What kind of wealth does he have to be able to provide for us like this? Yes. We've received someone's kindness for no reason, but we don't know who it is. How shameful. A smile tugged at the corners of Yunyang's lips as he walked past them slowly without looking away. Behind him, a one-armed man's voice rang out softly, catching his attention. Brothers, I've always felt. The one-armed man was obviously wary as he lowered his voice. I've always felt that. This matter seems to be related to the 9 Supremes. The 9 Supremes, lords? The others exclaimed in unison. Silence. The one-armed man reminded them hurriedly. I think, the 9 Supremes often distributed silver to the brothers back then. It was just that it was in the military then. Each time the troops retreated or the injured brothers were sent back, there would always be someone chasing after them. No matter how many people returned home, each person would receive at least 500 silver taels. We only found out later that the silver taels were not from the Board of Military. Do you still remember? Of course I remember. How can we forget the kindness that the 9 lords have shown to our disabled soldiers? The people sent by the 9 Supremes to deliver the silver taels were dressed in black and masked. The one-armed man's voice trembled. That night, I ate something bad and couldn't sleep. I could vaguely see a few black shadows, dressed in black and masked, throwing the silver taels in my room, then they disappeared. These men dressed in black, they wore the same clothes as the 9 Supremes' lord subordinates. The rest of the men jolted abruptly and stood up, their faces brimming with excitement. Is what you're saying true? The one-armed man's voice trembled violently as tears welled up in his eyes. Do you think that the 9 Supremes aren't dead yet? His voice was filled with intense hope. His thick Adam's apple bobbed up and down as he said longingly, the 9 Supremes shouldn't be dead. Other than the 9 Supremes, who else could keep us, the disabled soldiers from the battlefield, in mind? Yunyang sucked in a breath and left with large strides. The discussion was still going on, but there were already sobs. How I wish the 9 Supremes are still here. Sob. Yunyang sped up, crossing a few streets with no expression on his face. He came to a quiet spot and stood there, leaning his back against a dilapidated wall, taking deep breaths. There was a sharp pain in my heart. My brothers had done the same in those days. How could my brothers' responsibility and persistence be absent when it came to me? My 8 brothers' spirits in heaven must be comforted to see that I'm still carrying on their good deeds back then. Chapter 29. Yunyang walked on. The injured and the people in ragged clothes were everywhere. However, the people here were cheerful and contented. It was as if they had nothing else to ask for as long as they were alive. Compared to our brothers who are buried in the battlefield, we are lucky enough. This was a veteran who was blind in both eyes and crippled in one leg. As he sunbathed in a corner with his eyes closed, he spoke to an armless soldier beside him. His voice was low, but it was filled with nostalgia. The sunlight shone on them, filling them with the tranquility of being aloof from worldly affairs. Yunyang stared at them for a long time as he walked past, his eyes filled with undisguised envy. On the streets, there were also thugs with unbuttoned robes and ugly faces, walking back and forth with swinging arms. Yunyang's gaze lingered on these people for a long time as well, his gaze cold. He was tall, strong, healthy and strong. He did not want to support his family on the right path. He did not want to serve his country and join the battlefield. He did not want to live and work in peace, and he did not want to protect the peace of the people. Instead, they relied on their bravery to take things by force and bully the weak. Such people had no conscience. They did not commit major crimes but continued to commit minor ones. They deserved to be killed first in this world. It was a simple yard. The walls were built with large rocks. There were 5 rooms inside, plus the side rooms on the left and right. There was also a storage room to the south. Although this family was not well off, they were obviously better off than other families. The door was ajar. A little girl of 2 or 3 years old was squatting on the stone block by the door, her cheeks resting on her hands, thinking about something. A pretty woman dressed in a plain robe walked out. "Little darling, go back to the house quickly. Why are you sitting at the door again?" The little girl did not move, replying in a childish voice, "I'm here, waiting for Daddy to come back." "Mommy, where did Daddy go? Why isn't he back yet?" The young woman's body stiffened and the rims of her eyes reddened. She silently raised her head and looked at the black spirit summoning bell hanging at the door with a sorrowful expression. She murmured, "When darling grows up and becomes sensible, Daddy will come back." "Oh." The little girl pouted and said, "But little darling has grown up." The young woman nodded vigorously and choked back her sobs. "Yes, Daddy will be back soon." As he spoke, 2 streams of tears finally flowed down silently. Yunyang stood at the corner, feeling his eyes sting as he watched the mother and daughter. This young woman was the young woman he had saved that night, Deputy General Wang Zhuang's wife, Wan Er. Yunyang did not show himself. However, the little girl suddenly cried out in joy. "Ah, where did this kitten come from? So cute." Unbeknownst to him, a snow-white kitten that looked like a pom-pom had appeared in front of the door. This little kitten's entire body was spotless. It was so clean that it looked as if it was about to shine. Its dark green eyes were round as it squatted in front of Nan Nan, curiously looking at her. The little girl, Nan Nan, immediately fell in love with it. She staggered over. "Ah, kitty, are you here to make friends with me?" The kitten's fur stood on end, but for some unknown reason, it suddenly relaxed. It looked at darling curiously, and actually nodded its head gracefully. The little girl cried out in joy, "Wow, wow, that's great!" Her mother, who was standing behind her, was about to stop her, not knowing whether to laugh or to cry. A child's words carried no harm. A kitten appearing here, was it here to make friends with you? Could it understand what you were saying? However, the young woman's pretty eyes widened as she clearly saw the kitten nod, as if in response to her daughter's words. Then, it actually walked gracefully to Nan Nan, extending a snow-white paw reservedly to shake hands with Nan Nan. "Oh my God!" The young woman could hardly believe her eyes. "That's great! Will you play with me in the future?" Darling hugged the kitten in her arms happily and stroked it gently, treating it like a treasure. Her tiny eyes were like crescent moons as she smiled. The kitten was obviously resistant, but for some reason, it did not resist. It stayed in Nanan's hand, raising its pink paw hesitantly before putting it down again, meowing softly. Darling could not bear to let go of it, carrying the kitten back to her room. Mommy, is there anything to eat? Do I still have my biscuits? Do I still have my dried fish?" The kitten scrunched up its nose in her arms. The young woman hurriedly followed in, her voice faintly heard. "Oh dear, put it down quickly." "Whose cat is this? It might have an owner, you can't just take it. This kitten is really cute." Yunyang smiled and left without a sound. The kitten's pitiful meowing could be heard from the room. "From now on, you're the guardian of this area. If there's anyone or anything that bullies this area, I need you to strike without reservation. This area is where the families of my brothers and many of my injured brothers live. I need you to ensure the safety of this area. Every night, you can come back to the courtyard. I will double all the cultivation resources and food. However, if you don't complete the task well, you only need to do it once, and all the shares will be deducted for life. Do you understand? Meow. If those bad guys dare to bully others, just kill them. Do you understand? Meow. Be good. This kitten was the eclipse panther that had reached the level of a third-level mystical beast. After Yunyang had infused the air of vitality into it and added a layer of disguise, he had entrusted it with a heavy responsibility. As the cultivation progressed, the speed of this eclipse panther's advancement would be terrifying. With a future 9th-level mystical beast guarding his brother's families here, Yunyang could finally be at ease. To fight against the outside world, one must first settle the internal affairs. I'm still weak now. I can only do my best. Brothers, don't blame me. If I succeed in my revenge, I can still live. I'll continue to protect my brother's families. If I fail and die in the process, then what I can do now is to ensure that they don't have to worry about food and drink for the next 5 years. With this panther here for 100 years, they'll be safe. I'm sorry, brothers. This is all I can do for now. Yunyang left. His departure was resolute. His body was running on its own. Yunyang felt that he was brimming with energy, his blood almost boiling. Although he had only recovered 20% of his ability, Yunyang could no longer hold it in. I can't beat him, can I not scheme? On the other side, Jiling had left the residence of Yun, feeling aggrieved along the way. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she walked. Jerk. Bastard. I'll ignore you from now on. The more she thought about it, the more aggrieved and upset she felt. The more she thought about it, the more unreasonable Yunyang became. You think I've fallen for you? You're actually afraid that I'll cling to you. What's so great about being Dugu Chao's disciple? I hate people like you the most in my life. She was still indignant when she returned to the inn. Finally, she could not hold back her tears. She only had a slight liking for Yunyang. It was far from the level of being deeply in love with him. However, Yunyang's attitude was intolerable to her. She felt inexplicably aggrieved. How dare you bully me? I'll teach you a lesson. At the same time, groups of martial artists were gathering towards Tiantang City from all over the place. A man dressed in an aquamarine robe, aquamarine shoes, an aquamarine hat, an aquamarine belt around his waist, and an aquamarine bamboo branch on his head. He carried an aquamarine bag on his back and held a long aquamarine item in his hand as he sauntered through the city gate. The man was not old, looking to be in his 20s. He exuded a sense of cynicism from head to toe. He was dressed entirely in green. The only exception was that he had a black lion cub by his side. What was even more unusual was that this black lion actually had 2 heads. Although it was clearly a cub that had yet to mature, it looked extremely ferocious. It was rare to see such an oddly dressed person with such a strange appearance. Passers-by could not help but stare at him. However, this person was calm and collected as he sauntered forward. His eyes were filled with arrogance as he sighed heavily. It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. F***CK. Tiantang City, your father has finally arrived. Beside him, the 2 middle-aged men had a stoic look on their faces. Finally, there was a change in their expressions. That's right, young master can wash away his shame here. Take off this. Both of them seemed to be embarrassed to break their young master's taboo. What's there to be embarrassed about? The youth snorted. Your father will definitely win this time. Your father has been wearing this outfit for a year since I lost the last time. I'm willing to accept my loss. It's nothing. But if your father wins this time, none of them will have an easy time. They'll all have to wear it for your father. F***CK. Your father can't bear this year's suffering for nothing. I have to let them have a taste of your father's year. The man spat fiercely, his expression menacing. The 2 middle-aged guards were speechless. Everything else aside, could you change your catchphrase of your father? You still haven't learned your lesson after being beaten so many times. The last time you called yourself your father in front of your eldest brother, you were beaten until you couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. When the Lord family head came to take a look, you're your father enraged your father and almost got a concussion from 24 slaps. You still haven't changed. When the old ancestor came to take a look, you're your father's father, made that old ancestor leave with a flick of his sleeves. You've just been released from prison and are allowed to come out for some fresh air, yet you still call yourself your father? There's really no one else like this. Quickly find a place to eat and drink. The youth in green waved his hand. Your father is starving. Your father is dying of thirst. The two guards were exasperated. They really wanted to go against their superior and beat him up. Who the F***ck are you calling yourself your father? Your father's baby is hungry too. The youth in green touched a two-headed black lion beside him. The cub shook its head unwillingly to shake off his hand, its furry face full of disdain. This bastard is also disdainful of your father. The youth in green said angrily. If not for the fact that you're still of some use, your father would have stewed you tonight. The little lion's 4 eyes rolled back at the same time. It simply ran 2 steps and walked to the front. F***ck. The youth in green cursed. Your father's pet is actually like this. When your father is stronger, I'll beat it to death and eat its meat. Today I'll stew it. Tomorrow I'll eat its hind legs. The day after tomorrow. Woo! The two-headed lion charged forward ferociously and tore a big hole in the youth's robe. Then it turned and ran. F***ck. The youth in green covered his butt and jumped up. He was furious. One day, your father will eat you. The two-headed lion turned around and roared. It pounced at him fiercely. This time, its target was clearly his crotch. The youth in green was scared out of his wits. Master, master. I'll call you master. Spare me. Master. I'll call you master, all right? That's enough. The little lion rolled its eyes and walked in front arrogantly. The green-clothed young man's face was pale, and he covered his buttocks as he walked behind him. Hurry up and find me an inn, or buy me some clothes. What's the point of being half-naked? The two guards looked at him, speechless. Didn't you do this yourself? Why did you provoke that bad-tempered lion for no reason? You must have had nothing better to do. The youth in green was walking out when he suddenly exclaimed in surprise and looked ahead. This is interesting. Yun Yang turned around and saw that he had reached the main street. Just a turn and he would be at the residence of Yun. Just as he was about to walk forward, a shout came from somewhere. With a swoosh, a silhouette was flung out from the door in front of him. The silhouette landed hard on the ground and could not get up for a long time. Chapter 30. Turning his body sideways would allow him to avoid the attack. Even if he could not avoid it, he would avoid being hit in the vitals. Lastly, he could use his arms, thighs, buttocks, or any other unimportant and non-lethal parts to block the incoming weapons. Taking a step back was to ensure his safety. Looking to his side was to be prepared. If the attack in front of him was just a distraction, the fatal blow would come from behind or from his side. At the same time, his hand gripped the hilt of his saber as he leaned forward, ready to kill. This was an instinctive reaction that Yun Yang had developed after years of training. It was only when he straightened his body that he realized. It was a man with only one left arm, blood splattering all over the street. The man was convulsing in pain as he struggled to get up. Yun Yang frowned and looked up. There was a vermilion board on the main door with the words, Residence of Halcyon Marquis, written on it. Residence of Halcyon Marquis. Yun Yang immediately recalled the relevant information. Halcyon Marquis, Xiaowu Yuan, Assistant Minister of the Board of War, a civil official. His father-in-law was the imperial tutor, Lu Wei. He was originally an ordinary official, but after a few military exploits, he had actually risen to become the Assistant Minister of the Board of War. It could be said that he had real power. However, although this person had risen to his current position through military exploits and the title of a Marshal Marquis from the imperial court, and he was an official of the Board of War, he did not have the slightest fondness for the military. Since ancient times, the civil and the military had always been incompatible. It was the same in any imperial court, but there were not many who had such a clear attitude like Xueqi. Thank you, sir. The man who had fallen outside was obviously badly injured, bleeding from his mouth and nose. Only now did he snap out of it and cry out, This lowly one has been wronged. We are all from the school of militarism. Why must you kill us all? All from the school of militarism? Yun Yang frowned. Following this shout, 3 people slowly walked out from the gate. One was a young man, and the other 2 were guards. Strolling down the stairs, the young man studied the man on the ground with his hands behind his back and said with a pout, "Chen-san, this young master has given you this opportunity out of goodwill, but you don't know how to cherish it. Sparing your life is already an act of mercy. On account of the fact that we were once colleagues in the military, why don't you leave quickly? Do you want to die?" Chen-san stood up with difficulty. "I ask young master to be merciful and allow my wife to return with me. Young master Sir Xie, please understand. This lowly one has been honest and upright all my life. I have never done anything shady. This lowly one is innocent. Get lost." Young master Xie glared at him. "You're innocent? Could it be that the jade pendant I found on you was actually fake?" Chen-san said in grief and indignation, "Someone is framing us. Young master is wise." Young master Xie sneered, "You didn't frame anyone else but you? Are you handsome?" Chen-san's expression gradually turned to despair, and he suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "Even if this lowly one did it, what does it have to do with this lowly one's wife? This lowly one is willing to take the blame. I beg young master to let my wife go back." "Throw him out." Young master Xie said, "If he continues to speak, he will be sent to the court." He actually ignored him. "Thank you, young master." Chen-san shouted with grief and indignation, "I've known for a long time that you covet my wife's beauty. But people always have a conscience. You slandered me like this. Where is your conscience?" Young master Xie's expression darkened. He gave an order with a dark expression and turned to walk through the door. Chen-san stood up and was about to chase after him. "Let my wife out." However, 2 guards had already blocked his way. "Chen-san, don't talk nonsense and ruin someone's reputation. If you say another word, you'll really be sent to the court." Chen-san's lips trembled. "But, my wife." The other guard punched him in the face, causing blood to splatter. "What do you mean by your wife?" Scram. Chen-san fell on his back and cried out in despair, "Oh my God! Is there still a place for reasoning in this world? This is Tiantang City, right under the feet of the emperor." The people around them kept their distance, walking close to the base of the wall. Occasionally, they would glance over sympathetically. This Chen-san. Is the residence of Halcyon Marquis something he can afford to offend? Not bad, it's already good enough that he managed to escape with his life. If this goes on, he might not be able to keep his life. Sigh. What a femme fatale. Everyone's eyes were sharp, they knew what was going on with just a few words. However, who dared to say a word in the face of the powerful residence of Halcyon Marquis? Yun Yang's expression darkened as he took a step forward. He stretched out his hand. Pow! Just as he blocked another guard's punch, his other hand had already pulled Chen-san up. Remnants of the military? What happened? Chen-san's face was covered in blood and tears. Is it the remnants of the battle at Yengu Gate 4 years ago, young master? Yun Yang asked. What happened? Before Chen-san could answer, the 2 guards had already charged over with menacing expressions. Child, mind your own business. Yun Yang did not turn back as his leg flew out. With 2 bangs, the 2 guards had already been kicked to the ground by him. Raising his left foot, he stepped on the 2 guards' chests with both of his feet. The 2 guards felt as if a mountain was pressing down on them, suffocating them. Their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. They struggled with all their might but to no avail. Chen-san wiped the blood off his face and said in grief, "A month ago, young Master Xie sent someone to find me, asking me to be a guard at home and my wife to do the sewing. The pay wasn't bad, it was enough to supplement the family's income. I only knew that it was young Master Xie who sympathized with our difficult lives and specially gave us this job. Who knew that it wasn't like that after coming here? I've just finished my shift today. Young Master's jade pendant was lost, but it was found under my bed. This is Erebus injustice." Yun Yang nodded. "Say no more." A murderous glint flashed in his eyes. "I don't care if it's right or wrong." Yun Yang pulled Chen-san along. "What's wrong with detaining someone else's wife? Come with me." He strode towards the gate of Halcyon Marquis. The 2 guards finally picked themselves up from the ground and chased after him. "Stop right there." Yun Yang frowned and turned around abruptly. 2 heavy slaps flew out of the guards' mouths. causing them to spit blood as they were flung far away. It's fine if it's someone else, but looking at your actions and spirit, you must be from the military as well, right? Back then, your brother was bullied and even your wife was detained by someone else. How dare you help the evildoer? You're worse than animals. Yun Yang's tone was harsh. The two guards lay on the ground, their faces full of shame. It was obvious who was in the right and who was in the wrong. As the parties involved, how could they not know? Yun Yang. Young Master Xie had already turned around when he heard the commotion. His expression ugly. This has nothing to do with you. Mind your own business. Yun Yang smirked and pulled Chen San along as he walked towards young Master Xie. Xie Qingyun, what if I insist on interfering? Xie Qingyun retorted angrily. What right do you have to meddle in my family's affairs? Yun Yang nodded. With a sudden flick of his hand, a slap landed harshly on young Master Xie's face. His head tilted to the side as two of his teeth flew out. Blood gushed out of his nostrils like a fountain. Let him out. Yun Yang's expression was cold. How dare you hit me? Xie Qingyun's face was ashen, his eyes wide in disbelief. Slap. Yun Yang gave him another slap, snapping his crooked mouth back. His expression was cold as he said, "Hand him over." Xie Qingyun was flung away by the slap and fell to the ground. Suddenly, he crawled up like a madman and bellowed, "Guards! Guards! Someone come! Take this madman down!" Yun Yang took large strides forward, punching and kicking, knocking the four guards who had surrounded him to the ground. He grabbed Xie Qingyun's shirt and lifted him up, his left hand landing a vicious punch on his nose. There was a cracking sound. Young Master Xie's nose collapsed. "Take me down. Even your father wouldn't dare talk to me like this. I'm only asking you, are you going to hand him over or not?" Xie Qingyun was sobbing, unable to speak. A stern voice rang from inside. I was wondering who it was. So it's the young master of Marquis Yun's family. No wonder you dare to be so presumptuous in my residence of Serenity Marquis. As he spoke, a middle-aged man dressed in Confucian robes walked out with a cold expression. Looking at his son who was beaten to the ground by Yun Yang, a hint of heartache flashed across his face. Young Master Yun, this has nothing to do with you. Please let go. Yun Yang said coldly, ask your son to let him go and I'll let him go. There must be logic in everything. This middle-aged man was the assistant minister of the Board of War, Xie Wuyuan. His face was dark. You interfered without asking for the cause and effect. What logic is this? Yun Yang smirked and said, Logic? I'd like to ask how the Xie family is supposed to be reasonable. Let's not talk about the fact that Chen San might not have stolen anything. Even if he did, why did you guys detain his wife? What logic are you talking about? To catch an adulterous couple, to catch a thief, to catch the stolen goods. Yet, you're holding his wife captive? Is this logic, Sir Xie? Sir Xie. Yun Yang smiled faintly and said, Since you are being unreasonable, why should I be reasonable with you? I only have one question for Sir Xie now. Are you going to let him go or not? I don't care about the cause and effect. I'm not going to reason with you either. I only want him. It has nothing to do with me. I want him too. Yun Yang stood up straight. Are you going to let him go or not? Give me an answer. Xie Wuyuan looked at Yun Yang with a dark expression. He did not know about this incident. He did not know that his son would actually do such a thing. Now that he was under the watchful eyes of so many people, how could he be willing to lower himself? What if I don't let him go? Xie Wuyuan said coldly. Don't let him go? Yun Yang laughed. If you don't let him go, do you think I won't fight my way in to snatch him away? He charged straight in. Catch him. Xie Wuyuan was enraged. Catch him. Even if this old man has to enter the palace with him to meet the emperor, I have to make this matter clear. Even if the residence of Marquis Xiaoyao has the power to rule the world, you have to give this old man justice. I shall return justice to you now. Yun Yang smiled coldly and grabbed Sir Xie abruptly. Then, he jerked his body forward, his knee thrusting forward like a thunderbolt. Bam bam. Be reasonable. I am being reasonable with you. Don't you want to be reasonable? Come, be reasonable. Yun Yang scolded as he punched and kicked. Although he did not use mystical force, Xueqi was delicate and fragile. It did not take long for him to pass out from the beating. Let him go. You think you can scare me by meeting the emperor? Even if you want to meet the king of hell, you have to let him go first. The surrounding crowd's eyelids twitched. This fellow had actually beaten up Xueqi's father as well. Chapter 31. Stop fighting. Xueqi stood up, wiping the blood from his face. His expression was menacing. Give him the woman first. He then glared at Yunyang viciously. Yunyang, you're finished. You're dead for beating up an imperial court official like this. Yunyang smirked. It has nothing to do with you whether I'm dead or not. I'll count to 3. If she's not here by then, you're dead. Yunyang's gaze was icy as he stared at Xueqi. Xueqi could feel the undisguised murderous intent in Yunyang's eyes. He believed that if he did not hand the woman over, he would be dead for sure. The man before him was a madman. He was just a crippled soldier with one arm gone and other injuries on his body. He was of no use at all, and it had nothing to do with Yunyang. It had nothing to do with Yunyang at all. What was wrong with this fellow? Why was he charging straight up to him? His methods were brutal and his actions impulsive. It felt like he was not holding the wife of an ordinary crippled soldier, but Yunyang's wife. Was it necessary? Xueqi could not figure it out. Not long after, a beautiful young woman was brought out with a face full of panic. As soon as she saw Chen San, she burst into tears. Chen San hurried forward and hugged her tightly, comforting her softly. It's all right, it's all right. Don't be afraid. Countless guards and servants of the Xie family looked on, but no one dared to move. Chen San and his wife turned around and knelt down. Thank you, young master. Young master's grace is immeasurable. Yunyang frowned and said, Leave quickly. Bring your wife home to live. You're a man, why are you kowtowing like a bug? Chen San puffed up his chest and said, Chen San will not leave. Young master has gotten himself into great trouble for Chen San today. How can Chen San just leave like this? No matter what, this is all because of Chen San. Don't worry, Chen San, will never let young master take the blame for me. Yunyang chuckled. What blame? Go home quickly. Since I dared to cause such a ruckus so openly, do I not have any backing? If I were afraid of them, why would I be so presumptuous? Don't you understand this? Hurry and go home. Chen San thought about it and agreed, but was still worried. He said, Then I will take my leave first. After sending my wife home, I will report to the residents of Yun. If anything happens, Chen San will not shrink back. He knelt down and kowtowed, then supported his wife and left. The onlookers looked at Chen San's departing figure with complicated gazes. This Chen San had met a benefactor. Otherwise, this couple's lives would have been ruined. However, he was not wrong. This young Master Yun had indeed gotten himself into great trouble. Seeing that Chen San and his wife had left, Yunyang hugged his arms as he sauntered towards the door. Wait! Xueqi wiped the blood off his face and spat venomously. Yunyang, do you think you can leave just like that? Yunyang turned around and asked in bewilderment, You're not letting me go? Don't tell me you want me to stay for dinner? Only then did Xueqi wake up from his coma. His eyes sparkled as he let out a long groan. Yunyang, this old man and the residents of Marquis Xiaoyao are irreconcilable. Murderous intent flashed in Yunyang's eyes as he said, You speak as if I enjoy living together with your family. Show me what you've got. This young master will take it on. Xueqi huffed and puffed. Just you wait. Just you wait. Wah! As he spoke, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Yunyang rolled his eyes and walked out slowly. Before he stepped out of the door, he spat and mumbled, Your family doesn't even have the right to make me use my brain. He then left. How infuriating! Xueqi yelled. His body stiffened and he fainted. Just as Yunyang stepped out of the Xie residence's door, he saw a green fellow walking towards him. He was dressed in green. Green robes, green pants, green shoes, green belt, green hat. The corners of Yunyang's lips twitched. This fellow even had a green bamboo branch on his green hat. How much do you like the color green? This fellow walked over with a face full of enthusiasm and a hearty laugh. Oh my! I'm impressed. Young Master Yun. Is it? It's so good. So good, I feel so good just looking at it. Yun Yang was dumbfounded. What was wrong with this fellow? What was so good about it? Why did he not understand? Yun Yang did not know. Ever since he met Xueqi Yun, this green-clothed youth had been watching with glowing eyes and slapping his thighs. It's so good. It's so good. Look at him. The green-clothed youth had chattered non-stop, looking at Yun Yang like he was looking at his idol. Not even talking, yes. So what if he's being unreasonable? Your father just can't stand the sight of him. So what? He's too awesome. Too. This, F***CK, this child really has the guts to fight for real? Not only did he beat up the young one, he even beat up the old one. This is my idol. The green-clothed young master kept pointing and commenting, full of admiration. As he pointed, he sighed to his 2 guards. Did you see that? Did you see that? This is what you call a popinjay. It's a pity that I've borne the title of popinjay for so many years. Now that I've come to Tiantang City, I finally understand the true meaning of the word popinjay. What I did before was called a popinjay. This is the ancestor of popinjays. As a citizen of Tiantang, the descendant of a noble, he dares to beat up an imperial court official just because of a disagreement. This is much more difficult than me bullying someone. But he did it just like that, how clean. What's even rarer is that he didn't even consider the consequences. This feels so good, Tisk. What a role model for our generation. My poor young master Wuxia, Dong Tianling, has only realized after so many years of being a popinjay. The green-clothed youth's exclamation made the 2 guards' faces turn as black as charcoal. You're already lawless enough, but you're actually admiring this fellow who beat someone up on the street. If you do the same when you go back, beating someone up just because you don't like him, your days will be over. This fellow had wanted to help when Yun Yang had started. However, he was held back by the 2 guards. Seeing that Yun Yang was done, they quickly came over. Young master, you are? Yun Yang was dumbfounded. I'm Dong Tianling. The green-clothed youth introduced himself in a serious and friendly manner. Dong as in winter, Tian as in winter, and Lang as in winter. Yun Yang rolled his eyes. All right, winter. It's really not hot. My name is Dong Tianling. Dong Tianling was exasperated. My surname is Dong. My name is Tianling. Good name. Yun Yang's compliment came from the bottom of his heart. I have to say, I don't know this child, so of course I won't be impressed. However, this young master really admires the person who named this kid from the bottom of my heart. What kind of intellect was required to come up with a name like Dong Tianling? Isn't winter cold in your house? Dong Tianling was delighted. Out of all the people he met, who didn't complain that their names were weird? This fellow in front of him was actually praising his name loudly without hesitation. He was overjoyed and asked reservedly, How is it good? How is it good? Yun Yang scratched his head and finally said, It's good. Simple. Brutal. Straightforward. Also, it has a deep meaning and is very easy to remember. No matter who it is, as long as they see you once and hear your name once, they will never forget it. This is really a good name. As he spoke, even Yun Yang himself felt that the name was not bad at all. Ha ha ha. I didn't know that my name is so good. I've wronged my father for so many years. Dong Tianling laughed heartily and patted Yun Yang's shoulder. Not bad, brother. Not bad. Good temperament, righteous, bright. I'll treat you to a drink. Yun Yang was not in the mood to drink. He declined politely. I still have something to do when I get back. It's all right. I'll follow you to your residence for a drink. Let's drink after you're done. It was not easy for great young Master Dong Tianling to find someone he liked, and they were so compatible, be it in the way they did things or talked. How could he bear to part with them just like that? Yun Yang rolled his eyes. What else can I do if you follow me? Since we're free, why don't we drink together? Dong Tianling put his arm around Yun Yang's shoulder and said with a hint of melancholy, Brother, it's hard to find a bosom friend in life. You and I are not bosom friends. To be honest, I've seen my fair share of popinjays in this world, but none of them are as simple, violent, and unreasonable as you, brother. Not only that, they're even more direct, violent, and unreasonable. Dong Tianling said in awe. I've never seen one like this before. Even in the entire Tianxian continent, brother, you can be considered the top popinjay. Yun Yang felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. What is this fellow talking about? Why don't I understand? Popinjay? How am I a popinjay? I wanted to stir up some trouble even if I had nothing better to do, but I happened to bump into the father and son of the Xie family, so I might as well start from here. Besides, I'm standing up for the injured soldiers. How am I a popinjay? I want to ignite the conflict between the civil and military officials and throw the imperial court into chaos. I've almost thought of all the steps, and this is only the beginning. I still have a lot of tricks up my sleeves. Who would have thought that it would be nothing in your mouth? Top popinjay? If I F * King carry this title, my title as the Nine Supremes think tank will become a joke. I'm someone who relies on my brain after all. I'm ashamed of my brother's tricks. However, this incident of yours seems to have gotten out of hand. Dong Tianling put his arm around Yun Yang's shoulder and said, Don't worry, I'm here, you won't lose out. At most, tonight. He lowered his voice and said, Tonight, I'll annihilate his entire family. Yun Yang snorted inwardly. Indeed, this fellow had a good eye. Great minds think alike. It just so happened that he had such a plan. Dong Tianling's two guards followed behind Yun Yang and Dong Tianling with dark expressions, feeling like thousands of divine beasts were galloping and roaring in their hearts. What an unreliable and strange thing. Young master had stuck himself to him just like that. No matter how Yun Yang had tried, no matter what methods he had, no matter how tactfully he had declined, it was all in vain. Dong Tianling had his arm around Yun Yang's shoulder all the way back to the residence of Yun. When he got home and saw Lao Mei's strange gaze, Yun Yang could only order, serve the dishes and wine. Tonight, brother Dong and I shall have a good drink. Lao Mei's gaze was strange, his expression strange. I heard that you've just destroyed the residence of Anyuan Marquis and that both father and son were beaten half to death by you. Are you coming home to celebrate? You actually want to have a good drink. Chapter 32. Wine and dishes were prepared. Young Master Dong Tianling began the meal that brought him the most expressions in his life. You ate so much? Dong Tianling was flabbergasted, looking like he had been greatly shocked. He pointed at the huge basin of mystical beast meat in front of Yun Yang. My appetite has decreased by half now. Yun Yang was very satisfied. A few days ago, he had eaten 50 to 60 catties for a meal. Tonight, he estimated that he would be full with 20 catties. This was F** King good news. From this, it seemed that Emmy was collecting energy. It should be almost done. It looked like there would still be a day when he could return to normal. How he looked forward to the day when he could be full with 7 to 8 meat pies. Decreased by half. Young Master Dong Tianling was speechless. His jaw almost dropped. Eating more than 20 catties of meat in one meal, eating other things and drinking. His appetite had actually decreased. This is nothing. Yun Yang said faintly. Before this, I could eat so much that I was afraid of myself. You're indeed my popinjay idol. Dong Tianling was completely impressed. Look at him. Every meal of mystical beast meat. Even as a young master of one of the 8 noble families, I don't get such treatment. Eating 10,000 silver taels for a single meal. This is what you call a model. This is what you call being rich. Since you're here, drink as much as you want. Come. Clang. Yun Yang placed a huge pot of wine in front of Dong Tianling. Dong Tianling's eyes widened again. This pot must be 15 catties, right? Oh my god. Do the people of Tiantang City drink like this? Yun Yang brought another pot over and waved at the 2 guards. The 2 guards shook their heads quickly. They had the heavy responsibility of ensuring young Master Dong's safety. How could there be any guarantee when he drank like this? Perhaps they would kill their own young master without even knowing it. Then I shall not stand on ceremony. Yun Yang opened the mud seal with a slap and raised the pot. Dong Tianling's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Gulp, gulp. Half a pot in one go. Awesome. Yun Yang put down the pot. Drink. Why are you looking at me? Dong Tianling's mouth twitched. Idol, do you all drink like this? Yun Yang rolled his eyes. I don't know about others, but I've been drinking like this for a year. Boss. Dong Tianling's lips trembled as tears welled up in his eyes. He hugged Yun Yang's arm, forgetting himself. From now on, you're my boss. You are my blood brother. You're too awesome. You're just drinking, yet you're able to act cool to such an extent that it's unprecedented. You must teach me. Yun Yang looked at this fellow speechlessly. Be it eating or drinking, do you think I want to eat like this? Drinking like this? Pretentious? I'm not going to pretend with you. He almost put down his chopsticks and stopped eating. Eldest young master Dong Tianling let out a strange cry and gulped down the wine pot. Young master, you can't. Just as the two guards spoke, Dong Tianling was already coughing. Cough, cough, cough. It's really not something a popinjay like me can pretend to be. Your Pekingese is not bad. Yun Yang looked at the two-headed lion that was sitting obediently by the dining table and praised. There are two of them. Very good, very obedient. This is a double-headed Elysian lion. Dong Tianling was speechless. An 8th-level mystical beast. Ah! Yun Yang pulled out a piece of bone that he had gnawed clean from his mouth and threw it to the so-called double-headed Elysian lion, asking, Do you want to gnaw on the bone? It doesn't gnaw on the bone. The corners of Dong Tianling's lips twitched. Double-headed Elysian lion, my lord. In my house, it only eats rare treasures. Even if it eats meat, it's the whole mystical beast's meat, my lord. Dong Tianling glared at the double-headed Elysian lion that was happily wagging its tail and gnawing on the bone. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets once again. Are you King kidding me? Doesn't gnaw on the bone? Yun Yang looked at Dong Tianling like he was looking at an idiot. This? Dong Tianling could not wait to dig a hole and bury himself in it. Looking at his double-headed Elysian lion gnawing on the bone, eldest young master Dong Tianling felt like his face had been slapped swollen. Every time this fellow gnawed on the bone, there would be 2 slaps on his face. Can't you King leave your father some dignity? Thinking of this, eldest young master Dong Tianling suddenly came to a realization. That's not right. Why didn't I call myself your father when I was with this fellow? This is obviously a Pekingese. Yun Yang said with certainty. It's double-headed. Dong Tianling was speechless. Looking at this fellow gnawing on the bone and wagging its tail, I feel like it's a Pekingese as well. This dog looks pretty good. Yun Yang stretched out his hand to grab the double-headed Elysian lion's tail. Don't! Dong Tianling hurriedly reminded him. This double-headed Elysian lion would really eat people. Especially its tail. It was something that no one could ever touch. He had seen a few people who wanted to touch it but were bitten by the double-headed Elysian lion when it went berserk. However, just as young Master Yun was about to say something, he swallowed it back down. Yun Yang's action was swift. With a swoosh, he had caught the thick tail in his hand. Rubbing and caressing it, he lifted it up and down a few times and said seriously, This dog is not bad. Dong Tianling's eyes widened, unable to utter a single word. Especially when he saw how the double-headed Elysian lion could still put on a fawning expression when it was biting on the bone. It was actually afraid that young Master Yun would not be able to pull on its tail and had even twisted its buttocks to get closer. Was this still an 8th-level double-headed Elysian lion? This was a Pekingese. One word, despicable. Dong Tianling felt. Am I King sick? My eyes are not working? Or am I suffering from hysteria? I can actually imagine such a ridiculous thing, and I can even imagine that I saw it myself. The eyeballs of the 2 guards almost popped out of their sockets. What was going on? The double-headed Elysian lion had always been a precious existence in the family. Even its owner, Dong Tianling, had to put in a lot of effort just to touch it before he could reluctantly let him caress it lightly. Just for a moment. However, it was behaving so submissively in front of this young Master Yun Yang, whom they had only met for the first time. Both of them believed that even the dogs they had raised since they were young would not be as submissive as this double-headed Elysian lion in front of Yun Yang. Have another bone? Yun Yang was still teasing it. This one? There's still some meat on it. I've just taken 2 bites. Have another peanut. Come, jump up and catch it. Swoosh. The peanut flew into the air and the double-headed Elysian lion leaped up gracefully, catching the peanut in mid-air with its mouth. It then landed and wagged its tail in front of Yun Yang, asking for praise and reward. Good boy. Yun Yang rewarded it with another bone that had been chewed until it was smooth. Dong Tianling was utterly confused. Even Dong Tianling could not help but curse at the double-headed Elysian lion's behavior. The question was why? Dong Tianling slowly turned his stiff neck to look at Yun Yang. Boss. Oh, my idol. No, big brother. Dear brother. How did you do it? Yun Yang looked at him in bewilderment. What? Dong Tianling called out and suddenly stood up from his seat, bowing his head in obeisance. Big brother. Please take me in. Young brother's respect for you is like the long river of Tianxian, never ending, like the endless ocean, rolling forward. Yun Yang was speechless. The two guards were equally speechless. That night, Dong Tianling drank himself into oblivion, hugging Yun Yang's leg and crying, tears streaming down his face. In the end, Yun Yang had to push and pull before he could chase this fellow out of the door. Big brother, boss. Dear brother. Let me stay, I want to learn from you. Learn to be a popinjay. Sob, I mean it. Don't chase me away. Dear brother. After a long time, with the help of the two guards who felt so humiliated, young Master Dong Tianling was carried away like a pile of mud as the effects of the alcohol finally kicked in. It's finally peaceful. Yun Yang could not help but heave a sigh of relief. He could not help but chuckle bitterly. This fellow is really... Lao Mei looked at him with a complicated gaze behind him. Yun Yang turned around. Lao Mei? What is it? Lao Mei sucked in a breath and said, There are some things that I don't know how to say. I don't understand. Yun Yang replied warmly, Go ahead. Lao Mei pondered for a moment and said, It's like this. I keep feeling that young master seems to have missed too many opportunities these few days. Yun Yang frowned. It's like this. Lady Ji Ling came to the residence of Yun. She's obviously from a hidden family, and she's a huge one at that. Even if we can't be... Well, we can still be friends and help each other. But in the end, young master did not even bother with her. Even if it wasn't for her beauty, it could have been for something else. This is the first thing that I don't understand. When the four noble young masters came, young master had already used his identity to intimidate these young masters. If he had continued to interact with them, he might have been able to gain the help of these four families, or rather, the help of one or two of them. This would have been a great thing for a family in Tiantang City, but young master did not do so. Young Master Ma, young Master Qin and the rest have already been blackmailed by young master a few times. This time, young master has given them a huge profit, allowing them to recoup their losses in one fell swoop. It should have been the perfect opportunity to mend their relationship, but young master has given up on it and has not even asked about it since that day. Fourthly, the injured man is now able to move. Young master has said that he wants to recruit him, but young master has left him there and ignored him for 3 days. Fifthly, this young master Dong obviously admires young master from the bottom of his heart. As long as young master is willing to put in some effort, he would be taken in as a subordinate, but young master still did not do so. Chapter 33. Yun Yang shook his head lightly. It's not time yet. Lao Mei was puzzled and felt even more conflicted. Is this not the right time? When would that be considered the right time? When that time comes, wouldn't that be the time when I've offended everyone? Lao Mei, show me Xiaowu Yuan's criminal record. Yun Yang did not explain but changed the topic. All right. Lao Mei smiled. Ever since I found out that young master had caused a ruckus in the Xie residence, I've been prepared. All right. Yun Yang said faintly, make a copy and send it to old Marshal Qiu Zhenhan. Or do I have to sneak it over? Of course. Lao Mei looked up at the sky and said, I'll go at midnight. Yes. Yun Yang turned and walked towards the room on the right. There, the lights were still on. Here it should be time. This fealty jade sword Feng Mafei had been silent ever since the two of them guessed each other's identities that day. Every day, other than cultivating, treating his wounds, eating, drinking and sleeping, he did not speak a single word. Occasionally, he would walk around the room with the help of the table, panting heavily. Tonight, Yun Yang was bawling and drinking but Feng Mafei did not join him. He was only cultivating. But he waited. He was waiting for Yun Yang to come and talk to him. Although he did not know what they were talking about, he knew that Yun Yang must have a motive. Finally, Yun Yang had arrived. This time, Yun Yang did not test the waters like before. He sat down directly. "Brother Fong, how are you feeling?" Yun Yang asked with a smile. "He's recovering faster than I expected." Fong Mofei was rather surprised as well. Under normal circumstances, with my injuries, I would only be able to hang on to my life and regain my senses in such a short period of time if I had heaven and earth treasures to preserve my life, as well as a miracle doctor to treat me and a life-prolonging spirit pill. But, here, I have carefully examined the medicine. It is just an ordinary medicine. But now, I can already stand up. This is simply magical. Fong Mofei pursed his lips. Even though he had roamed the martial arts world all his life and had seen many things, this was the first time he had seen something so bizarre. Especially, it happened to him, and he couldn't find the reason for it. That was even stranger. At the same time, Fong Mofei found it odd that Yun Yang had called him Brother Fong. Although I look like I'm in my 30s or 40s, I'm actually in my 70s or 80s, okay? Isn't it a little inappropriate for a young man like you to call me Brother Fong? However, he had saved his life. How could he say that? No matter what, I have to thank young Master Yun for saving my life, Fong Mofei said. Don't mention it. It's nothing. Yun Yang grinned. Besides, if you want to thank me, what Brother Fong has given me has far exceeded my expectations. Fong Mofei's heart sank. Young Master Yun means, those lightning cats? Yun Yang smiled meaningfully. Lightning cat? Brother Fong, if that's the case, it's not worth the life-saving grace that Brother Fong spoke of. The corners of Fong Mofei's mouth twitched awkwardly as his heart turned cold. What I want to know is, Brother Fong, how did your loyalty heart jade sword get these? Lightning cats? Yun Yang said slowly. From what I know, these lightning cats live in the boundless forest. Although they're not in the true core zone, they're still one of the overlords of the periphery. Yun Yang said playfully, Loyalty Heart Jade Sword, Fong Mofei, 7th peak and 6th tier mystical chi, wields a white frost jade sword, indestructible. Trained in swordsmanship at the age of 7 and achieved success in 10 years. Roamed the martial world and experienced hundreds of battles. At the age of 56, climbed to the 7th peak of mystical chi. Unfortunately, he was defeated by a masked man dressed in black and retired for 3 years before making a comeback. Here, let me clarify that the masked man dressed in black is rumored to be Whirlwind Blade, Wang Zifu. Fong Mofei's expression did not change, but his heart was filled with shock. Since his debut, all the news, all the battles, including the sparring between friends, were actually in the information that Yun Yang had provided him with. What was even more ridiculous was that he still did not know who the masked man in black who had defeated him was. But this young man had actually said it out loud. Whirlwind Blade, Wang Zifu. No wonder the way he wielded the sword was so strange. Since then, Fong Mofei began his occupation as a mystical beast hunter, until Yun Yang smiled. Until he suddenly appeared in Tiantang City and fainted in front of a mystical beast shop. Fong Mofei kept sucking in air and nodded. Young Master Yun's information is very detailed. Detailed? Yun Yang smiled faintly. This is your information on the surface, there's another one in the dark. Do you want to hear it? Fong Mofei's expression changed. In the dark? Yun Yang folded his arms behind his back and looked out the window, reciting like he was reciting from a book. Fong Mofei's nickname is Fealty Jade Sword. However, the word fealty is worthy of consideration. Although Fong Mofei has not committed any evil deeds, he is not worthy of the word fealty. Fong Mofei has a mysterious weapon on him that takes lives whenever he strikes. I believe that this mysterious weapon is the origin of the word fealty. This is a secret. Fong Mofei sucked in a cold breath. Fong Mofei looks like a mystical beast hunter on the surface, but there are times when he disappears for no reason. It can be as short as half a month, or as long as 3 months. There doesn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary, just a routine of the martial world. However, during the period of Fong Mofei's disappearance, there must be casualties among the 5th, 6th, and 7th level experts in the martial world. Some are young, some are old, and others are living in seclusion. After these incidents, Fong Mofei returns and appears in the eyes of the martial world. I believe that Fong Mofei has another identity. Yun Yang did not turn back. He could hear Feng Mafei's trembling. If Feng Mafei's other identity is true, he's an assassin. There are 3 major assassin organizations in the martial world now: the Concourse of the Underworld, the Hall of Crimson Blade, and the Merciless Tower. The Merciless Tower has a clear price. Eliminate them. The Hall of Crimson Blade is all sabers. Eliminate them. Only the Concourse of the Underworld can be discussed. Yun Yang turned around and looked at Feng Mafei's pale face, his eyes that were almost out of focus from the shock. He said slowly, "There are 10 kings in the Concourse of the Underworld. According to the corpses of these years, Feng Mafei is mostly from the Yuyan region. These are under the jurisdiction of the Concourse of the Underworld's first court king Qingguang. Feng Mafei's cultivation base isn't at the level where he can hold his own. He can't reach King Qingguang's position. Therefore, if my guess is correct..." A smile appeared on Yun Yang's face as he looked straight at Feng Mafei. He should be an assassin under the world's top assassin organization, the Concourse of the Underworld, one of the 10 kings of the court, King Qingguang. According to Feng Mafei's cultivation base, he should be one of the Concourse of the Underworld's gold-ranked assassins. It's just that his ranking is unknown. I'm ashamed. Please punish him accordingly. Beads of sweat the size of soybeans rolled down Feng Mafei's forehead as his heart was in a state of turmoil. He felt like he had been stripped naked, pulled out from the shadows and placed under the sun. All his secrets were no longer held back. Where did this come from? Feng Mafei could only feel his heart beating like a drum. His voice was extremely dry. "It's my subordinate's confession material," Yun Yang said faintly. "I asked him to investigate Feng Mafei, but he only gave me this pile of information. Most of it was his own speculation. In addition, he didn't even know Brother Feng's ranking among the gold-ranked assassins under First Court King Qingguang. Therefore, this fellow was afraid and came to ask for my forgiveness." Asking for forgiveness. Feng Mafei was on the verge of breaking down. The information had completely exposed him, yet he still wanted to ask for forgiveness. Was it not detailed enough? For a moment, Feng Mafei felt his mind blur as he panted heavily, almost fainting again. Of course, there's also a lot of information. Yun Yang said, "There's information about Brother Feng's family. When did Brother Feng start to be interested in women? When did you first come into contact with women? When and how did your personality change? Brother Feng's attitude towards your family, analysis of the possibility of being controlled by your family, as well as your children's situation, who among your children you favor, information about the people you've killed all these years, who these people have offended, who's most likely to pay to kill them." Yun Yang heaved a sigh of relief. "I have it all here. Brother Feng, do you want to take a look?" "No, there's no need." Feng Mafei had completely broken down, his eyes staring blankly. He did not know what to say anymore. Who would have thought that he would meet such a monster when he fainted due to severe injuries? Brother Feng's life experiences can be said to be very interesting. Yun Yang said slowly, "Everyone knows about the fealty jade sword, but who would have known that the righteous Brother Feng is actually a disciple of the dark and sinister Concourse of the Underworld?" Feng Mafei was drenched in sweat. "Actually, these are all minor details. I'm not concerned about them." Yun Yang walked to the table and poured himself a glass of water, saying, "What I'm concerned about is, Brother Feng's cultivation base isn't enough to defeat an Eclipse Panther. It's even more impossible for you to kill an Eclipse Panther couple, and even have the chance to plunder the Eclipse Panther's 4 cubs." Feng Mafei looked embarrassed. For a spirit like the Eclipse Panther, if it was really going to die, it would destroy its cubs first. This was common knowledge in the world of mystical beasts. The higher the level of the mystical beast, the more it was so. But Brother Feng did it in the end. You even brought the 4 mystical beast cubs to Tiantang City in one piece. Yun Yang said, "I'd like to hear the story behind this." Feng Mafei's expression turned ugly. He heaved a deep sigh and said, "This time, someone discovered it by accident. The mother of a pair of Eclipse Panthers was pregnant and was surrounded by a group of high-level mystical beasts. They escaped with wounds all over their bodies. When we heard about it, we immediately had an idea. So, we contacted 5 people and entered the Endless Forest together." Feng Mafei's expression was filled with sorrow. The process was smooth and the Eclipse Panther was indeed severely injured. Among the 5 of us, we only paid the price of 4 heavily injured and 1 dead before we completed the mission. Yun Yang listened quietly and could not help but smile inexplicably. Only the four of us were left, supporting each other as we walked back. My injuries were the lightest. I supported the two of them with one hand, but, just as I was about to walk out of the endless forest, I was suddenly attacked from both sides. Two swords were stabbed into my left and right side of my back at the same time. My left and right chest were pierced through at the same time. At the same time, the back of my head was hit hard. Yunyang frowned. That's right. I was wondering why the wounds on your chest and back were too smooth. It seemed like you were ambushed when you were caught off guard. The three Hu brothers. Feng Mafei's eyes were about to pop out of his sockets. We've been sworn brothers for more than 40 years. We kowtowed to each other, we've been companions for decades, we've been through life and death many times. Yunyang sighed softly and said slowly, if we were brothers, why would we need to be sworn brothers? If we weren't brothers, what's the use of it? Chapter 34. If they were brothers, why was there a need to be sworn brothers? If they were not brothers, what was the use of it? Yunyang's words sounded normal, but in Feng Mafei's ears, they were like thunder. So you killed them and ran away with the mystical beast offspring? Yunyang asked. I wanted to. Feng Mafei sighed bitterly. But I don't have that ability anymore. I suffered 3 heavy blows all of a sudden. By the time I managed to free myself, the 3 of them had already pounced on me. I was already at the end of my rope. So I had no choice but to use my fealty essence. Feng Mafei chuckled bitterly. This is a mystical skill, but it's also a vicious hidden weapon. After severely injuring the 3 of them, my last thought was to run away with the mystical beast. Feng Mafei's eyes were red, not from crying, but from the pain of being betrayed by his brothers. I burned my essence and blood along the way, escaping at all costs. Actually, even I don't know how I entered Tiantang City, or how I fainted in front of some store. Feng Mafei sighed. Those 3 people. The 3 Hu brothers, I don't know how they are now. But, when I attacked, I was still soft-hearted for a moment. I remembered not to aim for their fatal spots. Feng Mafei sighed. So, their lives shouldn't be in danger. The 3 Hu brothers. Yunyang murmured, lowering his head and musing. Do you want to take revenge? Do you want to kill them? Feng Mafei was at a loss, a fierce struggle in his eyes. Decades of friendship. When faced with a shocking benefit, the 2 sabers and 1 strike without hesitation. Did he want to kill them? There's no need to answer this question. A hint of satisfaction flashed across Yunyang's eyes. His hesitation now was an indication of how much he valued his friendship. Although they were heartless and unjust, Feng Mafei was still hesitant. Yunyang's tone was much more relaxed as he said, Brother Feng, what are your plans for the future? Although Feng Mafei did not know what Yunyang's objective was, he understood everything when he heard Yunyang's words. Was he trying to recruit him? After knowing that he was the concourse of the underworld's assassin, he still wanted to recruit him? In the future? I don't know either. Feng Mafei smiled bitterly. After this serious injury, I can clearly feel the damage to my vitality. I'm afraid I won't be able to recover in this lifetime. Yunyang said calmly, this is what you feel. However, I have a few predictions for Brother Feng's future. Feng Mafei said. The first option is for Brother Feng to leave my place and continue roaming the Jianghu after you've recovered from your injuries. However, this path is full of hardships and risks. Moreover, it is just as Brother Feng said. This time, my vitality has been damaged. If I want to return to my peak, it is almost impossible. I believe Brother Feng knows that sooner or later, you will die under the sword. Feng Mafei sighed at Yunyang's words. As a member of the pugilistic world, how could he not see this clearly? Sometimes if you offended someone, you would die a violent death. Secondly, those few sworn brothers of yours will never let you off. Since they've shed all pretense of cordiality and they've let you down, they'll do everything in their power to kill you. I'm sure you're aware of this. Yunyang said slowly. The first option is for you to continue roaming the martial world until you're killed. The second option is to live in seclusion and withdraw from the martial world. But now is not the time for you to do so. Your foundation is not strong enough. Feng Mafei sighed dejectedly. That was right. His foundation was not strong enough. Retreating now would only lead to death. The third option is to stay by my side and serve me with your life. Yun Yang's words were clear. If you stay, other benefits aside, your body can completely recover to its original state or even improve. You've already experienced this. Another benefit is, your position as the concourse of the underworld's assassin can still be done if you want to. I won't interfere, but it has to be with my permission. Feng Mafei's gaze was focused as he pondered deeply. He looked up and saw the faint smile on Yun Yang's face. He suddenly chuckled bitterly and said, "There's another possibility. If I don't stay, I won't be able to walk out of this door alive." Yun Yang's gaze was indifferent. Young Master Yun has 4 9th-level mystical beast babies. Once this news gets out, young Master Yun will never have a day of peace. I'm the only one who knows about this right now, Feng Mafei said. That's right. Yun Yang's eyes were half-lidded as he said in a low voice, "This news is very important to me. I'll stay." Feng Mafei made his decision quickly. Young Master Yun has the best information network in the world in your hands. You're thoughtful and far-sighted. You're definitely a talent of your generation. Now that you have 4 9th-level mystical beasts, you'll definitely become a Tianxian powerhouse in the future. I've roamed the martial world my entire life and have accomplished nothing. What's wrong with giving my remaining years to young master? It was not because Yun Yang might be silenced, nor was it because his cultivation base would drop and he would die a horrible death in the martial world. Most importantly, Feng Mafei realized that his state of mind had changed. The betrayal of his old brother of many years had disheartened him. The spirit of roaming the martial world and serving his family had gone. He only felt an emptiness in his heart. Perhaps, staying by young Master Yun's side was a settling or a turning point in his life. Feng Mafei did not even want to meet the 3 brothers who had betrayed him and turned against him. Yun Yang's expression did not change as he watched Feng Mafei swear to the heavens. He said softly, "Stay at home to cultivate and recuperate these few days. Help Lao Mei with some errands. I'll help you recover and I'll help you improve further. When your injuries are healed, I'll have something important for you to do." "Yes, young master." The night was as cold as water. Yun Yang sat under the pergola, looking up at the sky as his thoughts wandered. Feng Mafei's unintentional words had almost stolen his thoughts. Young master has the best information network in the world in your hands. This information network belongs to the 9 Supremes. It belongs to me and all my brothers. 3 Eclipse Panthers and a Lightning Cat were squatting obediently by his feet, looking like quadruplets. 3 of the Eclipse Panthers would lift their heads to look at Yun Yang from time to time, their eyes filled with doubt. Where did our boss go? Why hasn't he been seen for days? Swoosh! A small white shadow scuttled in from outside the wall and landed at Yun Yang's feet like a flash of lightning. It whimpered softly, its voice filled with endless grievance. "Master, you left me there. That little girl almost rubbed me to death." You're feeling wronged. Come, this is something good for you." Yun Yang placed a hand on the little creature, and a wave of refined air of vitality flowed into it. The little thing cried out in joy. This kind of power was really too good, too beautiful. As for food, go find it yourself. Yun Yang patted the little creature's head. "You must complete the task I've given you. If you don't, there won't be such a good thing anymore." The tiny Eclipse Panther nodded obediently and sniffed Yun Yang's hand with its tiny nose. It then gathered with its siblings and played around happily for a while before it spun around reluctantly and darted out with a swoosh. Yun Yang woke up from his deep meditative state. Feeling the mystical qi in his body that had grown stronger, an inexplicable glint shone in his eyes. He slowly stretched out a hand and placed 5 fingers on the table. Without a sound, his fingers pierced through the 3-inch thick table, forming 5 neat holes. Wood splinters flew everywhere. Yun Yang pulled his hand back and slowly channeled his qi. As his mystical qi surged, a mountain could be vaguely seen above his palm. The peak of the mountain was high and covered in clouds and mist. However, looking down from near the peak, the outline of the mountain was clear. Only the top of the mountain was still shrouded in thick fog. "One more day and I'll be able to break through the first peak." Yun Yang mumbled to himself, "It's the first heaven of cultivation. I'm about to break through." He took a deep breath and changed his cultivation route. Slowly, Yun Yang's body became more and more blurry, more and more illusory. Slowly, he turned into a white cloud. It floated around in the bedroom, changing into various shapes. Even a gap the size of a fingernail could pass in and out at will. It was Supreme Cloud's unique mystic art. After a while, the clouds and mist stirred and Yun-Yang appeared in front of the table, sweating profusely. He panted heavily, his face a little pale. I can only maintain it for 3 breaths. Yun-Yang sighed. Besides, it has form but no substance. This won't do. Although the endless divine art was powerful, its advancement speed was 1,000 times faster than ordinary cultivation methods. If it was an ordinary cultivation method, it would take at least a year to go from nothing to almost breaking through to the first heaven, no matter how talented one was. Yun-Yang had only used 4 days, but he was still not satisfied. I can't hold on. Yun-Yang sighed. I still can't. Looks like I have to hurry up and give Emmy some nourishment. In his subconscious, Emmy was swaying its tiny body in boredom. Waves of refined chi of vitality swayed along with it, ready to spill out. Thinking of increasing nourishment gave Yun-Yang a headache. Emmy liked fine jade, mystical stones, mystical crystals, and so on. In other words, Emmy liked everything that had been accumulated for thousands of years and could possess innate spiritual chi. The problem was, these things were exorbitantly expensive. Where could he find them? Emmy had eaten half of those he had won the last time and turned them into powder. The other half was urgently needed and could only be sold. That was all. As for killing people to obtain the air of injustice, Yun-Yang had no interest in doing so. He was Supreme Cloud, one of the 9 Supremes. How could he find trouble with gangsters every day? As for some fixed goals, Yun-Yang's current ability was not enough. What a headache! Yun-Yang frowned for a long time and began to sort out the steps of his plan. Every step is a matter of life and death. Chapter 35. Since the 9th day of the 3rd lunar month last year, old Marshal Qiu Jianhan had developed a habit of being unable to sleep at night. Every night, he would feel his thoughts churning like a tidal wave, thousands of thoughts in his head. He could only sigh when he thought about it. The death of the 9 Supremes was definitely a massive conspiracy. The scale of this conspiracy and the breadth of its scope shocked the old marshal every time he thought about it. After investigating openly and secretly for a year, all he found were a few insignificant small fish. There must be a powerful traitor in the military. There must be a traitor in the government. As for the royal family, the old marshal felt like his head was about to explode each time he thought about it. There must be one as well. The other countries must be involved as well. Marshal, you're still awake. Sir Wang strolled over under the moonlight. How can this old man sleep with the internal and external troubles? Qiu Jianhan heaved a deep sigh and said, Have you managed to contact them? His question was a little out of the blue. No. Sir Wang frowned as well. Those people refused to contact anyone. Ever since the last contact was rejected, all of them suddenly disappeared. It was as if they had evaporated from this world. Sigh. The old marshal sighed deeply. These people won't come out until the 9 Supremes' death is avenged. It's a pity. Sir Wang was silent for a moment before he said, but there are plenty of clues that these people are still active. Of course. The death of the 9 Supremes is suspicious. How could they give up on revenge? The old marshal was not surprised. The 9 Heavens Intelligence Network has always been a world unto itself, but the death of the 9 Supremes has merged the 9 Heavens into an iron plate. Other than the 9 Supremes, they won't listen to anyone else's orders. The old marshal said, Refusing to cooperate now will cause them to gradually fade out of the imperial court. Slowly, they will become a force in the martial world and hide underground forever. However, they will become a massive underground force in the entire Tianxian continent. I really don't know if this is a blessing or a curse. Sir Wang was hesitant to speak. What is Brother Wang trying to say? Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan asked. Perhaps it's an illusion. Mr. Wang said, I still feel that this 9 Heavens Intelligence Network is still listening to orders, is still under a strong control. What? The old marshal sat up abruptly. What proof do you have? Each of the 9 Supremes has a team. This team has always belonged to them alone. They interweaved with each other to form the 9 Heavens Intelligence Network. Mr. Wang slowly said, but Each branch of the Nine Heavens Intelligence Network has its own leader. This means that under the Nine Supremes, there are 1 or 2 people in charge. If there's really no leader, then these 9 teams will definitely fall apart. It's absolutely impossible for them to fuse into one. Mr. Wang said, just like the 9 gangs, which gang's boss would be willing to obey the orders of another gang's boss? But now, under the 9 Heavens dictum, no one dares to act recklessly. In other words, there must be a power above them that controls them. Mr. Wang's eyes became brighter as he spoke. Otherwise, they wouldn't have rejected our contact. The old marshal's eyes grew brighter as his body trembled. Could it be that the 9 Supremes are not dead? That's impossible. Mr. Wang's words dashed all of the old marshal's hopes, causing the old man to collapse on the chair like a deflated ball. But there must be another setup. That's for sure. Mr. Wang said, the biggest possibility is that it's in His Majesty's hands. The other possibility is, they've set up a major domo under the 9 Supremes. Other than these 2 possibilities, there can't be any other reason. Mr. Wang said confidently. His Majesty. The old marshal sighed. His Majesty has only vomited blood and fainted 3 times because of the 9 Supremes. Forget it, this old man will find a chance to discuss this with His Majesty. Mr. Wang was about to speak. Suddenly, the sound of sleeves fluttering in the air rang. Swoosh. A silhouette flew past the marshal's residence with a swoosh. Who is it? How dare you? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A few silhouettes reacted almost instantaneously, rushing into the sky at the same time. The place was filled with people in an instant. It's too late. Mr. Wang's expression was somber. They've left. Marshal, someone dropped a bag. A tall and sturdy guard walked over with large strides. It seems to be paper. Autumn Blade, open it and take a look, Mr. Wang ordered. Yes. Autumn Blade tore it open without hesitation and a stack of dossiers fell out. There's no poison, nothing else. Autumn Blade did a quick check. Let me see, the old marshal said. There was a small symbol on the dossier. Once the old marshal held it in his hands, he trembled all over. It was 9 stars that were dotted with ink, forming a circle. In the middle of the 9 stars was a strange symbol that looked like a ball of fire burning fiercely. 9 Heavens dictum. Mr. Wang's gaze was transfixed, almost screaming. It's the 9 Heavens dictum owner's flame dictum. Old Marshal Qiu sucked in a deep breath. It's a pity that Supreme Flame didn't issue it himself. If Supreme Flame had issued it himself, this ball of flame would be red. His old face suddenly revealed a sharpness like a blade. Since the 9 Heavens dictum is issued, there must be something. This old man shall take a closer look. The dossier was simple. It was the misdeeds of an official's life. The old marshal was infuriated when he read half of it. Xiao Yuan. Qiu Jianhan snorted coldly and said, this official is suing the Board of War's Assistant Minister, Xiao Yuan, for marrying another after killing his wife and son, for coveting wealth and being devoid of conscience, for bullying men and women, for killing the innocent, for framing the loyal, for seizing military and civilian assets for personal gain, and for colluding with foreign countries, 98 major crimes. Please judge this, Your Majesty. As he spoke, he handed the dossier over right away. The civil and military officials in the imperial court were in an uproar. The corners of Grand Tutor Lu's lips twitched, disbelief written all over his face. Old man, you're spouting nonsense. My son-in-law, Qiu Jianhan said coldly, your son-in-law's crimes are all in here. There are witnesses and evidence. When Your Majesty is late, you can take a look as well. If you still think that your son-in-law shouldn't be killed. Humph. The old marshal glared at Grand Tutor Lu like an arrow, his meaning clear. If you still dare to cover up for him, I'll deal with you as well. There was no need for him to say it. Up above, His Majesty was trembling with rage after reading only half of it. Read it out, listen to how our Board of War's Assistant Minister has done. As the eunuch read out the charges, the civil and military officials stared with widened eyes. Grand Tutor Lu fainted after listening to the first charge. Xiao Yuan had a wife and son in his hometown. After graduating from high school, he secretly sent someone home to kill his wife and son. The corpse was buried. The person who handled it was. The witness was. Then, he intentionally approached the residence of Grand Tutor's daughter. Grand Tutor Lu had already fainted. For so many years, he had been deceived by this fellow, even losing his daughter. He had supported him with all his might, but he was such a heartless and unscrupulous animal. Exterminate his family. His Majesty only uttered these 4 words in the end. Like old Marshal Qiu Jianhan, he knew that Xie Yuan's fate was sealed when he saw the 9 heavens dictum symbol on it. After the 9 Supremes incident, this was the first time the 9 heavens dictum had contacted the imperial court. If there was no explanation for this matter, the 9 heavens dictum's people might really vanish without a trace from now on. Therefore, although the things written on it could be investigated, His Majesty had no intention of doing so. After the court session ended, Old Marshal. His Majesty's gaze was like a hawk's as he looked at Qiu Jianhan. Then Marquis Yun's son. Go and touch him. All right. This old official has had the same intention, Qiu Jianhan agreed readily. At your house then. His Majesty said, I want to take a look as well. The old marshal furrowed his brows. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.